It raised its two front legs and waved them around, and then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I...
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Weekend Breakfast. I'm Peter Barnes, covering for the great Alex Phillips, who's off watching the F1, so good to have her. She has a lovely morning, and I'm going to be taking you through the next 4 hours with it, bringing you the biggest stories, and we'll see what we get up to. But, you know, I was going to come out here this morning and give you the usual speech, you know, the 1 year review of Labour, the scandals, the betrayal, the broken promises. It's all written literally right in front of me. The sort of thing we call political commentary these days, the rinse, repeat, rage, collapse. But I can't give that speech. I'm sorry, I can't. I physically can't, because something happened last night, something real. The weekend was supposed to be special for me. Me and my partner finally carved out some time. He's been away, I've been flat out, and, you know, we go away on Monday. But he nipped out while I was literally here just last night with Kevin O'Sullivan. And, yeah, he popped over just to a friend's house, picked up a few bits. And he's sweet like that. I mean, he puts up with me, for God's sakes. But time passed, a little bit more, and then some more. Our friends hadn't seen him. No messages, no call, gone. And then that sound, that one we all know, that WhatsApp ding. You know that, it's like a gut punch. It was him, thank God. But just a photo, scratches down his arm. A short message, he could barely get his words out. English, not his first language. But it was clear he'd been attacked. He'd been mugged, not far from this studio. And I tell you now, out of nowhere, just in the middle of the street, a guy getting on with his day, just trying to, you know, just do a favour for me. And I have never felt my blood run that cold. Luckily, he made it back, and I never felt that kind of terror, and I hope I never do. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody that helped him, the Samaritans out there. I tell you now, I'll never thank them enough. But once that fear faded, I tell you what I was left with. Rage. Unfiltered, boiling, righteous rage. Not just at the pathetic cowards who did it, but at the people who let them believe that they could do it. At the leaders who have allowed this to become normal. At the silence. Where were the police? Where's Sadiq Khan, the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister? Where were they? While my partner bled, I was frantically, like everyone, you know, trying to find anybody that will listen. While London, this capital, became a place where safety is a luxury and violence, it's become routine. The people in charge, they weren't here. They never are. They're blaming each other, they're giving statements, doing PR, running damage control. We run blame and distraction, not protection, not on principle, not for people. This is the year 2025, and nipping out to see a friend is now an act of bravery. Think about that. Let's sit with it. Let's sit with you. We've fallen so far, we can't even see the floor anymore. And I've come to one brutal conclusion. These people simply don't care. Not about you, not about me, not about my partner, not yours, not your kids, not your future. They just don't care. And that sickens me. The rot in this country from the inside out. And that's the truth behind every crisis we face right now. Because if nobody is ever held accountable, there are no standards. Because then what's the point? This society has become rotten to its core. And quite frankly, I'm done. I'm done covering for incompetence. I'm done explaining failure. I'm done making excuses on air for people who have no excuse. It's not complicated, most of this. It's not tricky or it's nuanced. It's simple. They don't care. And if they don't care, then why should I keep pretending to fix things for them? Why should any of us bother to care? There was a time when this country stood for something. I'm not that old, but I do still remember it. There was a time when we fought for each other. There was a time when we didn't just walk on by. But now, we switched off. We move on. We cope. And that, sadly, has become survival. But let me tell you what survival looked like in my home this weekend. It looked like holding my partner's hands while he shook. It looked like him standing, and the first thing he said to me, have I eaten? Have I had dinner? You know, that's the kind of guy that he is. And I tell you right now, I am done pretending that this country has a future at the moment, because as far as I'm concerned, this isn't managed decline. It's gone. It's done. Society has just given up. And unfortunately, there are not enough people are starting to ask, how do we save failed Britain? Because I've refused to call it managed decline now, because I've seen the barefaced reality that many people who are supposed to run this country, are supposed to keep us safe, who are supposed to do the basic job, just don't care. And when they do a bad job, which is pretty much most of the time, they never get held accountable. And you know what? It's time that actually we stood up and we demanded change. Not asked for it, demanded it. Because we won't get help from the people that are supposed to help us. We just won't. The Met Police don't care, whether it's up in Greater Manchester, Scotland, wherever. They don't care. Because as long as they're fine, that's what matters. And I am exhausted of it. Everyone always thinks, oh, you must be angry all the time. I'm not. I'm exasperated. I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of listening to these stories day after day, week after week, sitting in this studio trying to explain the nonsense that we have in Westminster, the nonsense that happens at local councils, the nonsense that happens at City Hall. Because that's what it is. It's games to these people. Your life is nothing but a game. And it has to stop. It's about time we demanded the change. Because unfortunately, like I said, nobody's coming around the corner to save us. But I tell you now, there is somebody who's in the studio with me who I wish was still in charge, who I wish was still helping run our police department, and that is the great Mr. Peter Bleksley. Thank you so much for joining us. And as you know, we spoke many times about the state of the police, the state of this country, the state of society. And I just don't know where we go from here. If people like me are giving up, why is everybody else even bothering?
OK, first and foremost, Peter, OK, I hadn't heard about this until you've just spoken about it. It's clearly an extremely serious matter. My first question is, are you OK to carry on talking about this?
100%. Yes, I think that this is important that we do talk about it. That, you know, what happened was not a particularly nice experience, but it's not a unique experience, and that's the bit that I think is the saddest bit of all of it, really.
Right. Then secondly, and just as importantly, if not more so, how was your partner this morning?
Oh, yeah. No, he's fine. Yeah.
OK.
He's one of those, puts on a brave face, but he's all right.
Yeah, but please just be aware that trauma can affect people in different ways, and there may be a reaction some way down the road when all of a sudden it hits him. So I'm just asking you to be on red alert for that.
Yes.
Now, did he have any property stolen from him?
Luckily he's quite quick, so he managed to dart off pretty sharpish. But no, he's all okay. Everybody's fine and all the rest of it. But it was one of those moments where I stood there and I'm like, how is this happening again? And do you know what has annoyed me? It didn't surprise me that was the end result as to why we couldn't get a hold of him, and why nobody knew where he was.
Was it an attempt to rob him?
Yes, by the looks of it, yeah. They've basically seen him on his own. He's got a bag, and they just tried to jump him, basically. But luckily, he's got the wits about him, and he made a quick run for it. But again, it's just the casualness of this. And when you say it to people who live in this city, it's not a unique thing to London, if we're being honest. They go, oh, yeah, of course, that happened to a friend of mine, that happened to my sister, that happened to my brother. It is becoming normalised that the streets aren't safe. And I know there's so many police officers out there that are doing the best they can, but the people in charge, I don't think they care anymore. I think they have just given up. And, I see it. I've been around Westminster for a long time, and I've never seen it like this. I've never seen such complacency.
Look how many times you and I have sat in green rooms of various broadcasters, surrounded by other people who are either going to present or contribute or be a part of a show in any way, shape or form, and how many times they have told me about their experiences of crime. It happens every day. I'm in a green room with other people. Because it is the everydayness of this type of crime which is so utterly appalling. Now, the equally as important question as any I've asked this morning, did your partner report this to the police?
No.
Right. Now, this is when I get somewhat stern. I can appreciate you've had some trauma. Okay, he simply must, and I say must, there is no ifs or buts about it. He must report this to the police as soon as he possibly can this morning. And I'll tell you why it's really important. Not only because, let's be optimistic, it may force the police into some action. They may review some CCTV, for example. They may, now I am living in Wonderland, perhaps visit the scene and see if there are any witnesses. I think that's highly unlikely to happen, but actually it's what should happen. Especially 24 hours later, for example. But anyway, at least we might kind of force their hand into reviewing any CCTV. And let's face it, it's not far from here, and there's pretty much blanket CCTV around all this part of London as there is in so many other places. So it's really, really important. And there's another really valid reason as to why he should report it, and that is for the protection of others. If this is a crime hotspot, if this is happening a lot in that place, then I would like to think that the Met Police, with some analysis, might go, there's a problem here, we've really got to deal with it. So not only for the benefit of your partner, but potentially to help others. And of course, it is a serious crime, and crime is the police's job.
That's true.
So please, Peter, would you promise me that this matter will be reported to the police?
Of course it will. Now, but I think that's so important, the way that you've explained that, Peter, is actually that, there is a reason that we've got to still believe in it. We've got to still keep faith in the system. I know that it's not perfect. I know you of all people know how imperfect it is, but you're right. And I trust me, I will be dragging him down to the local police station as quickly as we can. But, again, it is...
Can I just stop you there, Peter? You might find that a very disappointing experience.
Oh, yes. I can,
There may be a queue, and they may just say, report it online. So in the first instance, I would suggest you go online. It grieves me to have to say that. It absolutely grieves me. But then take your time when you're reporting the details of that crime to lay out a very thorough picture of what happened, where he was, the direction he was walking in, where he'd come from, where he went after the attack, any description of the attackers. Can he recall what they were wearing? How many of them were there? What did they look like? What was their skin colour, for example? How tall were they? What was their build? I know this is easy for me to say as an ex-cop, and in the heat of the moment, when you're the victim of a very, very unpleasant and pernicious crime, you may not grasp those kind of things. I fully get that. But please, it might be better to actually sit at home on that laptop with you drawing out from him as much detail as you possibly can, because by doing that, what I really want to do is cut off the Metropolitan Police escape routes where they will use those to do nothing.
Yeah.
If you cut those off by including a lot of detail, then that will probably, I hope, say to whoever's desk it comes across, they're going to have to say, look, there's a lot of detail here. We're really being put in the picture here. We need to go and review that CCTV. And please do it urgently, because CCTV images are often kept only for a specific amount of time, because they're on a loop, you see, and then they will re-record and re-record and re-record over previous footage. So it's really important this morning, sit down, take your time, get that detail, because that detail will force the police, I hope, into actually doing something. And please send your partner my very best wishes. If you need any help this morning, if you've got any questions, you just pick up the phone when the show's done, and I'll help all I can.
Very kind. Thank you so much for that. Really, I do mean that.
Of the notes I took when you were speaking, and it was very powerful, there was one which I've written in red ink, and you said, I don't care. Well, we do have to care.
Yes.
Collectively, all of us do have to care, and we need to snap at the heels of these organisations, the establishment, to try. Because if we give up trying, then we are finished.
I think you're right, and it's the fight. Do you know what I mean? It's a consistent struggle just to get the basics. And, you know, something that I think we took for granted when obviously the streets have never been safe, but I just feel now, even before any of this happened, that I hear every day people like having the laptop nicked, having their bicycle stolen, having the phone literally snatched out of their hands. I happened to be a producer here at Talk. Just, 100 metres outside of this door, just whipped out their hand. And yet we say it with such a casual breeze that, it's just London. Oh, it's not, and it shouldn't be. And we've kind of become conditioned to accept it. And we've got to, like you say, snap our heels and actually snap back in and start paying more attention and holding the people to account whose job this is to make sure it doesn't happen, or at least, investigate and hold accountable those who perpetrate these crimes. It is I can't believe just how far this country has fallen in a very short amount of time.
We must not be desensitised to this. OK? We have to have this rightful sense of outrage and anger about it. OK? Because that will inspire us. A couple of notes. Please take any photographs of injuries that your partner has this morning. Upload those as you report the crime, and make sure you get the location, the exact street. If you don't know it or your partner doesn't know it, then when you finish here, go and have a walk and identify the right street and the right place, and again, take some photographs, if need be, of where it happened. And if you see a CCTV camera that's noticeable, that looks like it will have covered it, photograph that camera. Don't let the police off the hook here. Send as much information as you possibly can so that it forces them into doing something. And it grieves me to say that we have to force them.
Of that sentence, it just astonishes me that I have to force the police to investigate a crime. I have to force the Metropolitan Police to actually do their job. How have we got into this situation?
OK, there's a very long answer to that, but I'll be fairly brief because I'm leaving at 7:30. Anyway, Peter, let me just rewind, if I may, just a few decades to when I was a young cop, OK, patrolling the streets, walking the beat, as it was known as, OK? We had what are now called neighbourhood cops in those days, but they were called home beat officers. Now, what a beautiful title that is, because home beat, it immediately creates a link between that officer and that beat. It's their home beat. Beautiful language, very appropriate. When those officers used to come in, and they'd start about 8 o'clock, we were early term, we'd be in at 6. If you happened to be in the police station when a home beat officer came in and went to the crime book to see what crimes had happened on his patch, you could sense the outrage that would happen, because that officer would be so cheesed off if a burglary, if a car got stolen, if an assault happened on their patch. We had that sense of outrage. We hated criminals, and we hated the crimes they committed. Now, you imagine trying to use that language in a police station now.
I'm surprised there's not bobbies at the door.
Yeah, exactly, because I've said I hate criminals.
Yeah, I know.
And I still hate criminals with as much venom and vigour today as I did back then in the 70s, 80s and 90s.
I know. It just amazes me that even that we had the same thought, that the idea that you can say that about a criminal who is now, I think, given privileges, you know, all the special kind of treatment that they could give, and yet victims, the everyday person, people like everybody watching at home and listening on the radio, you know, they don't, you know, they're just an inconvenience, and most of the time I get the feeling. But honestly, I like you said, I'm trying to care. I'm trying to stay engaged. And if somebody like me, who lives and breathes this kind of stuff, is losing hope, I mean, it's just amazing to me. But, you know, I'm sorry to ruin everybody's morning, but I kind of feel that we had to really just knuckle in, because we are at 1 year of Keir Starmer. We're at 1 year of this Labour government who promised change, who promised so much and have delivered nothing but chaos, betrayals, and just misery, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about you, Peter, but I've never seen a government fall this hard, this quickly.
And their actions and their words are utterly astonishing.
Oh, it is.
Unbelievable. Can we talk about Starmer yesterday? And when he said, I won't use the word, of course, because it'll get us in trouble, but when he said he was a hard enough bee,
I know.
Okay, to run the country, how utterly pathetic.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of very hard people in my life. A lot of very, very extremely tough, hard people. Most of whom would lay down their jacket in a puddle for a woman to walk over, because they were courteous, polite,
the gentleman criminal,
charming, and all of that. They didn't have to say how hard they were. They didn't have to prove it to anybody. And my word, you would not have wanted to cross those people.
No.
Hard, Keir Starmer, he couldn't knock his way out of a wet paper bag.
The interesting thing, though, is if you kind of look all the way back to 1997, you know, you had Cool Britannia, and then, interestingly, you had Oasis back together.
Yeah.
You know, and they had their first tour, first gig of the new tour last night over in Cardiff. I hear it was a roaring success.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I didn't think they'd make it this far. When they announced it, I thought, OK, that's great. I'll give it a month and we'll see if they actually could be in the same room, because obviously the fallout of those two is dramatic, and they don't mince their words. I've always wanted to be at their house for Christmas. Honestly, just to sit at that Christmas, not to get involved, just to sit and watch. You know, you could make a spectator sport out of it. It'd be like the new Big Brother, but I can't see you in a bucket hat, if I'm being honest, although I would pay a lot of money, actually.
I own a number of hats, none of which are buckets, I must say. I think it's delightful. I mean, I'm the father of 3 sons, and the thought of any of my sons having a fallout would break my heart to the point where I don't think it would ever be mended. And I'm so glad to see they were back last night. Oasis are a truly outstanding band. They've written anthems of our lifetimes, and I hope this reunion lasts.
Same.
I hope that everybody who spent so much money on their tickets get to have an unforgettable lifetime experience, that they stay together and they remain together long after this reunion. Come on, we're not on this planet very long, people.
That's true.
Don't fall out with your
But I will say,
siblings.
this isn't the most important tour that's about to happen, is it, Peter? Because I've been told on the grapevine that you're basically giving your grand tour, as it is. I mean, how many dates is it? You tell everybody about it.
You are very kind, thank you. Yes, next
It's
year...
exhausting looking at the list.
In 2026, I'm going on a UK-wide tour, and you will be very unlucky if I don't come to a theatre near you. I'm doing over 110 nights at theatres in England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales... Here, there and everywhere.
I'm going to say via Narnia, Wonderland and everywhere else in between.
And I can guarantee you it is a true crime show like you will never have seen before. A small indicator as to why that is: there's not many people on this planet that have caught murderers, that have gone undercover to pretend to be a murderer, and that have then ended up having to go into witness protection because they were subject of a murder plot themselves.
I know, that's astonishing.
I tick those 3 boxes. I worked over undercover for over a decade. Imagine the stories I've got from there. And the second half of the show, I will be talking about a murder that I have been researching for over 20 years. It's a truly fascinating crime. It's baffling for many. It's been baffling for Police Scotland. But I believe, well, in fact, I know the identity of a man who very much features within the investigation and who I'm trying to get in front of. It's going to be a terrific night, I'm sure.
Yes.
Tickets went on sale yesterday.
Yeah.
So thank you for allowing me to talk about it.
Yeah.
If you want to come and watch me next year, please go to peterbleksley.com. It's that simple, and you can source your tickets from there.
And that's brilliant. Now, so I will be doing that in the break, and if you want to join us just after the break, we'll be going back to Keir Starmer and see how much damage this Labour government has actually done to the country. Back after this.
Well, I don't think it's an establishment of a party yet. It's certainly the calling for a party, and the Socialist Party, you know, welcomes this announcement. You know,
Would she rather she joined you, maybe, Rob?
No, the Socialist Party is a party with a few thousand members in the UK. We're very proud of that, but we've been calling for decades now for a new mass workers' party, a party that can give working class people an alternative to the big business parties that are out there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to Talk. I'm Peter Barnes, filling in for Alex Phillips, and I just want to say a big thank you to everybody who's already got in touch and wishing all the support for my partner, and just a very terrible incident that happened not far from here about the crime and the state of the country. And if you do want to get in touch, by the way, you should give us a call on 0344 499 1000, or you can text 87222. Make sure you start with Talk, or do send us a voicemail, WhatsApp as well. We want to hear your experiences. What do you think of Britain? Where do you think we're going right? Where do you think we're going wrong? And what do you think of 1 year of Keir Starmer? Because I don't know about you, I am astonished. This is just the fall of a government that never had a honeymoon period, because let's be real, they were voted in because they weren't the Conservatives. They were, you know, I think it's the loveless majority, which is a great phrase I've heard just the other night, actually, from Kevin O'Sullivan here at Talk, and you know, it's just perfect because everybody voted not for the other guy. But unfortunately, the Labour Party thought that they were the, you know, they were the beezies, that they were the most popular person, that they were the saviour of the nation. Saviour of the nation, spare me any of that drivel. But I mean, like, look at it. We had pledges, milestones. All of it was nothing short of lies, a betrayal, and mismanagement that would make, I don't know, something like a playground look organised and like a school trip. You know, I've seen teachers have better control of kids on the tube than anything else than we've seen in this government, because nobody is in charge. Well, There is. The people who are in charge are the backbenchers, because it's not the front bench. They're too busy crying on national television, costing us a fortune. But I'm joined this morning with the great Peter Bleksley, and, you know, it's amazing to me that on every issue this government touches, it doesn't make it worse. It just destroys it. You know, they say they have the Midas touch. I'd hate to think what they call what Keir Starmer's got.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget, because he and others would have you blinded by the fact that he was the head of the Director of Public Prosecutions, so the head of the CPS. Actually, he was a senior civil servant.
Yeah.
Right? That's what he was. Don't believe the other window dressing. That's the role he had. And so he wasn't a career politician. Now, I'm not saying we should have entire parliament of career politicians. I like people with outside experience, but his was the experience not from business, not from the world of technology, not from the NHS or anything like that. He was a senior civil servant. And look at the chums he made along the way, like Lord Harmer, right?
Lord Harmer, that's what I call him.
As Attorney General, who is so repeatedly damaging to this country, it's an absolute shocker that he occupies the position that he does. Whose side is he on?
That's true.
And Starmer is consequently, I think, so bad at politics. I love that expression, the loveless majority. I've always packaged it slightly different, saying they actually won a protest vote.
Yes.
That's what the 2024 general election was. It was a protest vote.
I don't think it was just that. I would say over the last 5 years, every election we've had, whether it be locals or whatever, has been a protest vote. It has always been something against. I can't think of a single political party, and I mean all of them, that could give you a clear vision as to what they want the country to look like. And for me, that's the word, vision. Give me something to vote for, not against. I am bored to the back teeth of hearing, oh, I'm doing this because that guy did that. That's not a reason to vote for somebody. And I think because our politics has got hooked on this, I think it's some kind of death spiral. And we've really got to have some, not hope and all this optimism. We're not Obama and 08. But I do think we need somebody with a vision and some guts and some courage to, one, tell us how badly it actually is, and two, to actually lead. There's no leaders at all.
You've absolutely nailed it, Peter, as far as I'm concerned, because we don't have conviction, principled, ideological politicians who know what they stand for, know what the country needs, and will therefore implement that.
Yeah.
We don't have it. Starmer was blown around by the wind. What stupid advisor said to him yesterday, go out there and call yourself a hard B?
Oh, I know.
Who, you know, the people he's surrounded with must be absolutely incompetent idiots.
Yes.
Morons.
Well, I think there's a lot of other words we could use, but we definitely can't use them. Not even necessarily not on air. But we shouldn't use them anyway. But it's staggering to me because everybody always talks about, you know, the chaos of the Boris Johnson years. But I look at this Downing Street operation as, like I said, it's just a circus. It really, really is. It is. Nobody has any control. And that's what you really need from a Downing Street operation. I've been involved in this kind of stuff for a long time. And you know when somebody's in control, a leader, a marshal. There is nobody in the Labour government that's doing that. Not just on the policy stuff, but just on the kind of messaging and the basics of politics. Because you're right, Starmer does not know how to be a politician. He doesn't know how to not play the game. He doesn't even be in the room. Well, he's never in the country. That's half of his problem most of the time. I mean, I like a holiday as much as the next guy, but, you know, he's got a permanent tan. He's like Dale Winton most of the time. It's ridiculous. But, you know, after the break, we'll carry on with this talk about Boris Johnson, because some people at the Conservative Party think he's the saviour. And I'll tell you this right now, if you think he is, you are the problem. But, yeah, join us after this.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to breakfast here on Talk. I'm Peter Barnes. I'm joined by the great Peter Bleksley, who, a very nice person, has said that you should be Prime Minister, Peter. And, you know, I just want to say thank you again for all these wonderful messages. And there's some great points in here. There's one. Why is it you can never find the one you've just read? But it makes a really good point about, actually, we blame the police for a lot of this, but the courts have a lot to answer for. The soft-handed treatment, the kind of rap on the knuckles for the, you know, for serious crimes is we have a real problem there, I have to admit. But we look at all this kind of stuff, but people keep saying, bring back Boris. We hear the Conservative Party is going mental with this at the moment. You know, he gave an interview saying, of all things, and I've heard some nonsense come out of that man's mouth, but this one has to take the biscuit, that he should ignore Nigel Farage. Just ignore him. Ignore reform. I mean, I just don't get that. I am known as a reform basher. I'm a big critic of theirs. A lot of them don't like me very much. But even I have to acknowledge the rise of them. But more importantly, why did they rise? They rose because of Boris Johnson. They rose because of the Labour Party. The mainstream has failed, and people are looking for some kind of alternative, and Reform are filling the gap. Rightly or wrongly, they're filling the gap, and it is working. And I don't know about you, Peter, but I don't understand why the mainstream does not get it. I really don't.
And Reform have also risen because they are led by a very charismatic
Incredibly,
man.
yes.
Whether you love him or you loathe him, his charisma is undeniable. And should you ever meet him, like I've done on a number of times, because I've been on his show on another channel, and we've met in green rooms and the such like, it is absolutely staggering. The man's inescapable charm and charisma. And it's not forced.
No,
and it's not
it's
contrived.
really not. Yeah, I have to admit, when I've met him, it is natural.
Yeah.
And because you think he would be kind of like a bit slick, for want of a better phrase. He's not. It is exactly what you see.
And when you talk to him, he makes you feel like you're the only person in the room.
He doesn't do what I call the Westminster bob around when they're doing that.
Yes.
Where, like, they're talking to you, but they're also looking at who's behind you. Is there anybody more interesting to talk to?
Yeah, exactly.
I can't stand people that do that. But no, you're right. Nigel's power as a campaigner is unparalleled. I mean, I don't think we've seen anybody like him. Blair had that in '97. Like, he was an effective campaigner. Yeah. But my thing with Farage is governing. Yeah. He's never really been, held down, in charge, if we're being honest. He's influential, probably the most influential politician we've seen in the last 20-odd years. But in terms of governing, Blair could do it. He could campaign and govern, whether you agreed with him or not. Yeah. I'm still on the fence about whether Farage has the skill to govern, because we have some big challenges. And what I'm seeing, I'm not really convinced that they're taking on the big, the meaty bits of the problems.
Yeah. Yeah, Nigel Farage's grandfather was a police officer.
No.
So we're always talking about policing. Whenever we meet, we talk about policing. And he regales me stories of his granddad's service and that kind of stuff. But to your question about leadership, well, of course, now they are in positions of leadership around the country. So Reform, I think, as a party, will now be judged on, can it govern locally? What are those councils going to do? And it has to be a lot more about taking down flags, which I personally agree with.
Yes.
But it's got to be a lot more than that. And
I couldn't agree more.
With potentially 4 years to another
general
election.
Don't say it out loud, Peter. Don't say it out loud. It's been a rough morning. Let's not ruin it any further, shall we? Oh my God.
With that possibility, they may have 4 years to either prove or disprove that they are a party that can govern, certainly at a local level. Yeah,
I've always said, actually, that in a weird way, actually, Nigel becoming an MP might have been one of the worst things that could have happened to him, because, his power is therefore is all confined to delivering. It's about, can you put your money where your mouth is this time? And, you can't really hop, skip and jump away from Parliament as easily as you can in other situations. But the Tories, I mean, I am a Tory. No, everybody knows that. But even I'm like, come on, buck up. Where are they? Where are you? There is so much happening. And yeah, they're getting their little attack lines in every now and then, but they're not making the impact. Kemi, I like the lady. I think Robert Jenrick is not helping the situation, but nothing is landing for them. Nothing.
My question, Peter, is not where are they, it's what are they?
Yes.
What are they? What are the Conservatives? What did they conserve about Britain in 14 years?
True.
What did they keep that we all are attached to? What did they keep that we all love, that actually keeps our identity, whether we be Welsh, Scottish, Irish, English, British? What Britishness did they retain?
Yeah.
I would argue not very much. In fact, I would argue that they played a huge part in the diluting and therefore the destruction of what is Britain.
Yes.
So now they're in opposition and they're in the wilderness and they've been smashed down to 120 odd MPs. They should be thinking, I believe, about what they stand for and what would they conserve or reinstate if they were to get back into power. I'm not hearing that.
No, that's true. The thing that always gets me is they had an 80-seat majority, which at the time was staggering. You know, Boris swept the red wall. He managed to win in places the Tories have never won before, and they did nothing with it. Fair enough, you had COVID and you had the Brexit chaos years and all this kind of stuff. But fundamentally, they still had 80 seats. And that is a huge workable majority, and they did nothing.
Yes.
And I think that is unforgivable, because what I thought they had the opportunity to do is repeal more than anything. They could have taken back all of Blair's reforms. They could have got rid of all the quangos, really tackled education, really got after the NHS and actually, you know, saved the thing, you know, and they didn't do any of it. And they just sat on their hands for 14 years.
But it's not only you as a Conservative that found it unforgivable. The country found it unforgivable, which is why they got bounced out and smashed down to the numbers in Parliament that they've got.
Well, you say that, though, but I still think everyone was rather surprised that it was 121 seats. And, you know, there was a lot of polling that said that we're going to go down to like 60. And there's a poll out at the minute that says it's going to be 10 seats. Don't get me wrong, even the 10 could all agree on something. They give you 1,000 opinions by midday. But I have to admit that the brand of the Conservatives has still held steady. You know, they're very core, faithful of the Tories. Now, the Labour Party have theirs, and the Liberal Democrats, when he's not doing somersaults somewhere, you know, Ed Davey, the embarrassment that is Ed Davey. I'm going to say that straight to camera. The embarrassment that is Ed Davey. You know, he needs to resign. You know, they've all got their core constituency votes, but it is interesting how the Tories, despite all of this, are clinging on, and I think that's what they've got to do. Just hold on. If they can hold on, I think there's a hope for them. But you are so right. They've got to find something to believe in. It has been so diluted. And more importantly, it's the institutions that have been diluted with them. And institutional trust holds the country together. We've got to trust Parliament. We've got to trust the media. We've got to trust our courts. Doesn't happen now.
But the clue is in the title. Conservative. Then conserve stuff, will you? Things that people find important, like in my life, fish and chips, Victoria Sponge, man-made laws, a dislike of face coverings, and so much more that I could go on about. Why don't they conserve things that are essentially British? And I don't mean in a 1950s way. I mean, although there's much about that era or that decade in which I was just about born in, that I certainly know my 96-year-old mum yearns for and laments and misses. But I'm talking about the Britain that we grew up in or evolved in, you know, that Britain of the 80s and the 90s, where the population was still essentially majority kind of British-born people, okay? And I know it remains that way, but that percentage is so much smaller now, where we didn't have uncontrolled, unmitigated, legal and illegal migration into this country. You know, let's conserve things. Let's remember all those brilliant people that have come to this country in the 60s, 70s, 80s and so on, who have completely and utterly ingratiated and involved themselves in British life. And look at the people that have contributed. Look at so many people that came to this country and are now proudly British.
It's amazing to see that, you know, the people who have like embraced it with such kind of openness, and you know, we've always had kind of quiet patriotism in this country, but I have to admit we're embarrassed of it now. And I think that has been kind of deliberately done in some ways, and I think it's been lazily let slip. But I do think you're right, that the Conservatives need to hook back into that. Reform are capitalising on it very well. They're playing the whole us versus them narrative, and it's working because it is evidently true in many areas. But, I mean, as for the Labour Party on this stuff, I don't think there will be a Labour Party after the next general election. I genuinely don't. I think we talk about the destruction of the Conservatives. I think the Labour Party is more on track to be split into about 3 different things than anything else.
Yeah, but the trouble is, Blair sowed progressive, politically correct thinking into every corner of public service, into every part of the establishment, the machinery.
Yes.
And let's look at public service in all its guises, throughout the civil service, the NHS, education, policing, wheresoever there is public servants, Blair sowed those seeds, which have now morphed from what used to be, back in the day, a personnel department, for example. Once again, what a nice title.
Yeah.
Because it was about personnel.
People. Yeah.
People, right? Then it became human resources, so that made the people within those departments more important and actually diluted the affection or the concern they might have for people. And now you've got stupid departments that do the same job and have titles like human capital management.
Oh, yes.
Right?
I know.
You know.
I always think that sounds rather nefarious. Just human capital. I was like, no, it doesn't sound right, that one, if I'm being honest.
But it is nefarious because the DEI intolerance that they force down people's throats has actually got us largely to where we're at with all this discontent. Meanwhile, lawyers and tribunals are chock-a-block full of work and are making lots of money because we're all being told in a very intolerant way how to behave, what to do, what we can say, what we can't. And that all started with Blair. He showed it everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
Yeah, it's what he called...
still there.
He called it the stakeholder society. So basically, he didn't have to be in power, but he was always in power.
Yes.
That was the genius of it.
Still is.
It still is. And yet again, the Conservatives could have repealed it, but I tell you, there's one area in which you rightly bring up, and it is the area of immigration. This country has let the borders slip. They are open. We don't have borders anymore. Yes. I don't understand how that is even a thing. However, we will get back to that right after this break.
I think far worse than anybody could have possibly imagined is the overall summary, with a little less worse abroad than he's done domestically. I mean, domestically, he's been a complete and utter catastrophe. Along with his Chancellor, they've sort of damaged the confidence of the United Kingdom in our immigration system with the boats. 20,000 coming in the first 6 months of this year.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome back to Talk Breakfast. I'm Peter Barnes, and I just want to say again, thank you for all these messages. They're making so many brilliant points. You know, there's, I think got Chris here saying that Boris got some front about Farage when he worked a deal with him, and then stabbed him in the back. The Tories are finished. They all lied all the time. I don't disagree with you on that, I have to admit. Well, how Farage ever agreed to stand down every MP, I don't think I'll ever know. We're back in that election. And then, again, from Chris, morning, Peter and Peter, great show so far. Thank you very much. I'm wishing my partner a speedy recovery. Thank you. And as for 12 months of Starmer, farce. I think that is a brilliant word. We don't use the word farce anymore. I think that's spot on and absolutely catastrophic. Oh, brilliant phrases, I have to admit. But yes, if you do want to get in touch, please do. The number is 0344 499 1000, or you can text us on 87222. Make sure to start with Talk, and you can also send us a voicemail WhatsApp message as well. We'll try to read those out and get through as many of them as we can. But going back to what we were talking about, Peter, I'm joined by the brilliant Peter Bleksley, by the way, who's keeping me very much in line this morning. That I'm slightly terrified of him. I'm glad he's on that side of the desk, I won't lie. But no, we were talking about immigration, and this country does not have borders. We do not believe in sovereignty anymore, and the migrant crisis is absolute proof of it. And to make matters worse, I don't know if you saw this one, where there was a BBC camera crew in front of the French police, where they stabbed a boat. I mean, talk about coincidence.
Yeah, of course. And what did it do? I think over the course of 4 days this week, we had nearly 2,000 come over in those boats. Yeah. Huge numbers, yet again. And I was talking to somebody the other day because I think it is such a stain and such an infringement, and I'll use that word, our sovereignty, our ability to govern who comes in and who goes out of this country. It's just utterly ludicrous, and it is a huge failing on the British people. And with every boat that comes in, there is, and it might only be by a small amount, but there is a diluting of me and my love of Victoria Sponge, and me and my love of cricket, and me of my acceptance of the rule of law, and that I want to live my life according to man-made laws, and the fact that I want the food that I eat to be slaughtered in the most humane way, and the fact that I don't like face coverings in public, and all those kind of things which I think are seared into Britishness. With every boat, with every arrival, that gets diluted a little bit.
It's that chipping away of just a little bit and just a little bit, and then you suddenly realise half of it's gone, if not more. And it is dangerous, because you're so right. We can't even count who comes in and who goes out. The Public Accounts Committee came out yesterday, and where they said that for the last 5 years, when it came to legal migration, nobody had counted if anybody had actually gone home when the visa had run out.
Yes.
I don't understand how that is a thing. And more importantly, why has nobody been fired?
Yes, of course.
Why has nobody been held accountable for this ongoing crisis with the migrant hotels? And I don't really like calling it the migrant crisis anymore. I think it's a settler invasion, if I'm being brutally honest, with the sheer number of people that are coming. Because they don't move, they stay. So they're not migrants anymore, or they're asylum seekers. That farcical nonsense. But I do not understand how nobody can be held accountable for this failure. Because the number one job of government, everybody knows, is to keep its people safe. If we don't know who's here, you cannot keep people safe.
You have nailed it, Piero. Absolutely nailed it.
I'm also loving the fact you called him Piero.
It is an absolute degradation of the duty by those tasked and elected into roles that should keep us safe. And of course, the boats gets so many of us hot under the collar because it's such a diabolical liberty, because it's so visual and it's consequently hugely emotive. But you know what? The whole other type of migration really is the bigger issue. Is much, much bigger issue. And I'm talking about the granddads from Ghana. I'm talking about the nanas from Nigeria. I'm talking about people that have come into this country. They're elderly, they will never contribute. I'm talking about the families that don't have any provision in their home countries for disabled children, and anybody who has a disabled child has my sympathy, but my sympathy does not stretch to them welcoming you in front of others into this country whereby your disabled child gets all the privileges when other people that were born here, that contribute, that actually raise decent kids and play a part in society, might not, because they're pushed down the queue, whether that's for housing or health. That really is the bigger problem, and no one's talking about it.
I have to admit, you're spot on, because we fuss over the small boats, but I think it's because you see it. Like you say, it's a very visual thing, but the kind of the legal migration, the fact that the Office of National Statistics had to call for an emergency census because it didn't count how many people were here. The people we pay to count didn't count. And nobody batted an eyelid. It was like, oh, that's just how it is. It has to. This stuff has to stop, because it is safety. It is also a basic British dignity. We are a laughing stock on the international stage when it comes to this stuff. But I really think you've nailed the head. It is always the aunties. It's your mum's, sister's, dad's, friend's dog, cat. That situation. You know, because there was 1.18 million visas offered in a certain period. 650,000 dependents came with those people.
That's what I'm talking about.
And we still don't know if they're still here.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's
the
incredible.
granddads from Ghana and the nanas from Nigeria who will never work, who will never contribute, who will never pay their way.
Oh, 100%. But it's done deliberately. You go get a visa because grandma needs surgery. That is what it is. Our services and our welfare state is being abused. There's no other word for it. It is being abused. And more infuriatingly, leaders of this country are getting up and saying it's not happening. And you're wrong for thinking what you're thinking. What you're seeing, you're racist for seeing that. It is the gaslighting. It's not lying, it is gaslighting. And that I find morally reprehensible, and how easy they feel that they can do it. That's the disturbing bit of it.
And it's happening on an epic scale, but you know the reason why so many of them can do it, and I rewind back to what we spoke about not long ago, about Blair sowing his political correctness, as we called it then, back in 1979, into every corner of public service. So it is in the NHS, so you can't say that at work. So it is in the civil service, so you can't say that at work. It is in education, so you can't say that at a school, a college, a university. You see how pervasive it is. You see how they've got us by the short and curlies, and it rewinds back to 1997 and Blair. And as you said, he's still in charge in so many ways.
He never left. He never left. And what I find more insidious is the fact it's not just in our institutions, it's in our heads. We are self-censoring.
Well, not mine.
Well, not yours. But no, I'd be terrified to be in your head, if I'm being honest. It'd be circuses in mine. But, you know, it's the fact that people feel they can't say something because they're scared of what will happen. They have created a hostile environment. That phrase, you know, that the Labour Party threw at the Tories one time, that is what they've created. An environment to where honest, decent people who are taxpayers do not feel safe to say certain things. And I find that just morally disgusting. And I don't like hyperbole, I really don't, but there's no other word for it.
And so much of that hostility and that willingness to jump on you and ruin your career and ruin your life if you get half a chance is by some lanyard-wearing person who calls themselves a professional, works in human capital management or human resources, and thinks they're so important that they wear their lanyard on the train home.
Oh, God, yeah. I'd rather they'd rip it off around the neck. Anyway, joining us just after this is the news.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah, a rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park. We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. As an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talk. I'm Peter Barnes, filling in for Alex Phillips. And yes, it has been quite the first hour. You know, we've been talking everything from Blair to immigration to the return of Boris Johnson. This sends a shiver down my spine, and I'm as Tory as they come. I just want to say a big thank you again for getting in touch. You know, we've got some great messages here. You like this one, Peter says, Mr. Bleksley talks so much sense. I'm very articulate, and I have booked my seat for his tour next year and should be on the Reform team and become an MP. By the way, I'm joined by the great Peter Bleksley. So, that, you know, at least you got one sale out of this morning. I'll give you that.
That's very kind.
Thank you. Brilliant. And again, there's another one here saying Nigel Farage has the heart of a lion, the love for our country, and would never destroy it. What, like loads of the Labour traitors? That's from Linda. Very powerful words, but a lot of people are feeling this. You know, this sense of betrayal is what really is driving so much of this. And this is a good one from Michael in Islington, saying it's out of hand now, lads, and I'm next door to that hotel, and the over the road is the new builds and parking spaces, and guess who's going in them? You know, again, we're seeing the asylum seekers getting front of the line. You know, you come into this country on a boat, you get given everything, and yet, you know, we have people, we have veterans on the streets sleeping rough. I do not understand it.
So just to repeat what I said a few minutes ago. Okay, there was 4 days this week when nearly 2,000 came in. In 4 days, 2,000 people. Now, where are they going to go?
That's the thing, isn't it?
We know they go to Manson, right? And they're not even properly vetted, identified and processed there, because the story came out not so long ago that they're so overwhelmed and understaffed that they just usher them virtually straight onto a coach. Off you go. Now, we don't know where they've come from, what their motives are, what their belief systems are. We don't know any of that, and it's utterly outrageous.
It really
but let's just focus on 2,000 in 4 days. Where do they go? That's 2,000 beds that have got to be found. All right, maybe there's couples there. I don't see overwhelming evidence of that every day, by the way.
I love that. We were talking about this, the BBC rather handily being in the sea, basically, to film one of these boats. I love how there was one woman, the only woman I've ever seen on any of these migrant boats. I found that astonishing.
And the BBC happened to be there when a French police officer has found a Stanley knife.
Yes, I know.
Yippee-doo, there's a coincidence.
I'm not being funny, but for 800 million quid, I'd expect it to be one good Stanley knife, if I'm being honest. But if we just have a quick look at the morning papers, because for those of you who've just woken up, it seems quite a lot to go through, but a lot has happened. But I tell you now, that as a guy from the northwest of England, I will tell you now, I am very happy to see Oasis back together. That is the leader on The Sun this morning. Yeah, it's a Stand By Me. It's so good. I have to admit, they really were the soundtrack of a lot of my childhood. In my local pub, if you did not know the words to Wonderwall, you were chased out with pitchforks and torches. To be honest, it's all we had, you know, that and a cart and a horse. But it was just amazing to me. But then looking at the Daily Mail, you know, Kemi blasts Labour lies and failure. You know, we were up to 1 year. It's only been a year, people, of Keir Starmer. Just 1 year. We've got 4 to go. I mean, I don't want to ruin your day any more than I, you know, normally do. But it's just astounding to me. You know, I take my hat off to Kemi. She's trying. She's trying her best to make any kind of noise. But realistically, it's not being heard by anybody because, as you rightly said earlier, you know, they had 14 years to solve some of these problems. They didn't solve them. They made them worse.
Yes. And, of course, although he's been quiet for the last couple of weeks, I think Robert Jenrick has been the person from the shadow government acting like a Conservative.
Yes.
With many of his very well publicised things that he's been doing.
His PR team... spot on. And I tell you what's interesting is the issues he's going after. The fare jumping. Do you know where people are not paying for the tube? That irritates everybody. Why am I paying and he's not? And that is a very powerful narrative.
And very well thought out because they did it at Stratford Station, which for those who don't know is right at the end of the Jubilee line. One of the more recent lines that's been built. It's probably 20, 30 years old now, and it's a good line. And Stratford, in the East End of London, that's the end of the Jubilee line. There's a lot of knife crime in Stratford. There's a lot of fare evasion. You know, that part of London has particular issues like so much of our capital city. So that was a very good place to position himself because it was a bit like shooting fish in a barrel to find fare evaders there. Well done. It's of the moment. It really chimed with the public. You go to work, you're paying expensive fees to travel around the UK now.
Only going up as well.
No matter where it is. Whether you're catching a local bus, if you're lucky enough to have a bus service, if you're travelling on a train. Goodness me, where do we start?
I'm 34 and the trains are why I look like this. It is ridiculous. I used to say it was Westminster. It's not. It's public transport. It's the trains. I mean, it's just astounding. But again, going up in price, standards dropping, nobody seems to want to tackle it and, you know, make things any better. But, I mean, when we talk about ignoring things, you know, there's Boris Johnson back in the headlines, God help us all, saying just ignore Farage. I mean, we should just ignore Boris, and we should have done a very long time ago. I remember when he was running to be Conservative Party leader, I said that man will blow up the Conservative Party. I was persona non grata for a long time. I'm used to that. But I tell you now, I've never felt more justified in my life. I said he would be a absolute fool. I said he was a bit of a charlatan. I hate to be proven right, but there we are.
Well, if Mr. Johnson can ever prove to me that he has a far healthier relationship with telling the truth, then I might listen to him. Until such time, no thank you.
Exactly, and again, the mirror goes with Madfram, obviously back with Oasis. Again, there's so many classic songs, you know, Don't Look Back in Anger. Well, I try, but, you know, this country leads me to it. Reeves hints at more tax rises. This is just astounding to me.
Now, here we go, eh? Right?
I mean, first of all, do not cry when you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer. The markets don't like that. You are not just a person, you are a figure. You're a symbol of economic credibility. You start weeping, so does the markets, and so does the country. The fact that she did not realise what effect she was having shows why she should not be in the job.
Well, she certainly shouldn't have been in the chamber that day, being that upset, OK? And I think perhaps her boss, as far as I'm concerned, you know, into every life a little rain must fall, OK? It happens to all of us sometimes. Good days, bad days, happy and sad. She should not have been in the chamber. Her boss should have been very aware of the upset. And any good boss should have welfare of their staff as a priority, as an absolute, unshakable priority. Because a team that's looked after will perform. Undoubtedly. I've found that when I've been in leadership roles, and I've always taken it upon myself to absolutely look after, defend and protect my team, so long as they're doing the job properly.
You want to work for people that will work with you. You know, they might be your boss, but it's a teamwork thing. And it's the way that he just pretended, like, it just said, oh, I didn't see it happening, it's PMQs. But also, the thing that is really annoying me, and it's the front leader of the Times going, Rees fears tax turmoil. They are going to use this welfare situation to justify the tax rises. I'll tell you right now, I could have told you about 4 months ago the taxes were going to go up. Right. They keep saying this as though it's completely out of their control. And again, it's a lie. It is gaslighting. It is a barefaced lie.
But if taxes do have to go up because their welfare reform bill didn't get passed in the form that they wanted it to, it's their party's fault. It's their fault for not reading the room music. It's their fault for not being able to keep their party in order.
Yeah.
So yet again, who's going to pay the price? Oh, yes. Those people that go out to work, pay their taxes, raise decent children, contribute to society, and are the fabric of this nation. Yeah, they're an easy target, so they will pay the price.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was supposed to save $5 billion has ended up costing us $100 million because of the catastrophe that it is. The management of that is an embarrassment. And again, nobody's been fired. Why is Liz Kendall, for example, the Work and Pension Secretary? Her legislation, her department, nobody's talking about her. I find it amazing. Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff, the guy who's supposed to be running the show, realistically, absent, gone. It's ridiculous.
Well, let's
I'm exhausted by it.
And the advisors that surround.
What do you always say?
McSweeney
You met some
and
special advisors.
Yeah, you know what I say about special advisors, and I've met a few.
Yeah.
None of them were special, and I wouldn't take advice off any of them.
That's so true.
You know, and who are these people? Where do they get them from? Kids out of university, young people with no life experience, people who clearly do not know what they are doing. And I've no hesitation in saying it again. Whoever advised Starmer to go out yesterday and say, I'm a hard enough bee to run this country, is an absolute idiot and should be sacked on the spot.
I mean, yeah. I saw that and I was like, somebody read that headline to me to make sure I've read it correct. You know, he cannot have been. My other one was famous, was when he was asked about Rachel Reeves crying, and he went, "There's a perfectly human emotion." He said it like a robot. We used to joke about Theresa May being a robot, and I was like, he's like an automaton. Is the word I would use for him.
Can I point out the utter lunacy of this? And unfortunately, this kind of went under the radar in the last week, and I'm a bit peeved by it. But last Sunday, on the front page of The Observer, okay, they were flagging up an interview that Starmer had done with his biographer, right, who's a snivelling brown-noser, obviously, okay, right? And the whole article was just...
who wants to read that?
Enough to make you vomit. Anyway, in it, Starmer said he was in a state after the front door of his former home got firebombed, right? Now, let me just point out, if I may, why that is so concerning, right? It's a block of bricks and mortar that he used to live in but doesn't live in anymore, okay? It's rented out, right? It's a rental from which he gets an income, right? Nobody got hurt. The porch got torched, okay? Right, unpleasant, but it's not a major issue for a Prime Minister who has 24-hour protection, the like of which cannot be surpassed on this planet, and will have that for the rest of his life. He admitted that he was in a state after hearing about that arson attack. This is the man who could have his finger over the red button and might have to nuke a country. And if he gets in a state...
Don't terrify the people this early in the morning.
If he gets in a state over a front door getting torched, it clearly shows, yet again, he is not fit to lead this country. He has not of the calibre, the character to do the job.
Yes, I always say the moment he disgraced the office for me when he gave that speech about far-right thugs. That speech was supposed to be about a horrific attack in Southport, and he weaponised his office and he used it to attack people who had a different opinion to him. I thought that was disgraceful. But it's interesting. Just after the break, what we're going to talk about is the police wanting the powers for cameras for face recognition. Yeah. It's an interesting story, this, and I'm really interested to get your takes. But do stick around and join us after this.
We're reaching boiling point with this. It's unsustainable. People are absolutely red hot furious about it, and yet they feel they can't do anything about it. You know, there's no election for 4 years. What are we supposed to actually do about this? And the answer is just try to spread the word that no landlord should have any part of this. It's unethical to take this money. And I hope, I don't know this to be the case, but I imagine that Reform UK-led councils will have no part in this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Breakfast here on Talk. I'm Peter Barnes. I'm joined by the brilliant Peter Bleksley, and I'm just having a quick flick through all these wonderful messages. Apparently, we are the greatest partnership that Talk has ever come up with. Lots of people love this show. Thank you so much for all these wonderful comments. And I know one for you here from Tracy saying, good morning. I, too, have booked my seat for Peter's tour next year.
Thank you,
there you
Tracy.
go. We are racking up the seats for you there, left, right, and centre. Now, but before the break, we were just about to get into face coverings. And the police want to ban them so they can use the cameras and facial recognition. Interestingly, I'm just reading that Kazakhstan just 2 days ago have banned face coverings on the same grounds to what we're looking for. And I find this a really interesting debate because not too long ago, we were all about kind of civil liberties. We were all about kind of freedom and making sure the government doesn't have this kind of power. A few years later, a lot of uncontrolled immigration later, we are having a very different reaction to this conversation.
As an old school former detective, I love things that help the police gather evidence and catch bad people. OK? As long as it's done within the framework of the law. Now, on that very note, Parliament is yet to create a legislative framework for the use of facial recognition cameras. OK? That is a major error on behalf of Parliament. This technology has been around for at least a decade or more and keeps improving and changing and getting better day by day by day by day. Parliament should have debated this and created laws, in other words, that framework around which the police could operate. But they haven't.
No, there's a shock.
So the police have had to do it themselves. And as you know, I am a fervent critic of the police when justified, but I also heap praise upon them when, again, it's justifiable. And on this front, facial recognition cameras, I have nothing but praise for the Metropolitan Police and South Wales Police, because they have been the two forces with the courage to innovate and deploy this technology. I'll tell you how it works. There is a database of thousands upon thousands of wanted people. Don't get me started as to why there's so many. Much of it is down to failings within the criminal justice system, some of the polices, the courts, the prisons, and so on and so forth. But there's this database. As I'm sure everybody knows, when you get arrested, your mugshot gets taken, your photograph is taken, and it's stored forever. Now, when somebody becomes wanted, there's a database of those wanted people. And these facial recognition cameras, with their very clever technology, if they film your face, in other words, so they capture your image, you walk past one of these cameras, OK, your image is captured, and in a nanosecond, the system can compare it to those people who are wanted, and if it's a positive match, in other words, your face is captured, you're a wanted criminal, boom, they get an alert. And there's a team in the Met that then swoop and arrest you. They deploy this technology 4 times a week. They've got a dedicated team. And in the last 18 months or so, they have arrested 1,000 wanted people, and it's led to nearly 800 convictions or cautions. So I'm a fan.
Yes.
I'm a big fan. South Wales Police, they've deployed it at sporting events.
I was just about to ask what kind of situations do they deploy this in. My brain did jump to sport events, I have to admit. Big crowds, lots of people.
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting, though, that the way this conversation has shifted, because the public at one point would never have been on board with something like this, and yet we're seeing the same call with ID cards now. Do you know, because people are feeling less safe. We're now looking at this technology, and I think you're right about Parliament lagging behind, though, I mean, we're lucky if it gets its shoes on most of the days. But it is interesting how the police have had to pick this up. But I still, just fundamentally in my stomach, do not trust a civil servant to not leave all this data on a train somewhere while they've, had too many pints the night before. It's just, it is the lack of kind of the framework, like you say, to make sure that it's not abused. Because this technology could very well be used against people for, not very good reasons. And it's about who has access to it and making sure that that is regularly maintained.
Breaking news here, live on Talk. Peter Barnes is a rampant lefty. All right? He's not. But you're echoing a lot of those civil liberty organisations and their concerns about it.
Well, they're not unfounded. If we look at the kind of some of the situations that we found ourselves with certain governments overstepping the mark. But I think
we're not China by any stretch of the imagination. I know we're far from perfect.
But they're far too efficient.
China.
They're too efficient. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, the concerns. Okay, they had far more grounds for them a decade ago because the technology was a bit clumsy. People were getting scooped up when it wasn't actually them. And that does happen from time to time, but those occasions are very, very rare.
Yeah.
It's getting better, much better, with people of colour recognising their faces and all that kind of stuff. And so the clever people developing it are making it better on a daily basis. But the reason why now the public are in support of things like this and ID cards, yes, of course, is the unmitted migration into the country, both legal and illegal, but so many more people now are becoming victims of crime.
Yes.
And becoming a victim of crime, like your partner shamefully was last night, tends to make people think about these sort of things.
Yeah,
they want to be safe. And you tell me, who would object to facial recognition cameras being deployed at a Beyonce gig, at a Taylor Swift gig, at something like that.
That's what happened at the Ariana Grande gig.
Yeah, where it might not only arrest a wanted terrorist, but it might detain known sex offenders who are not supposed to be around children and such.
That's very true. That's a thought I hadn't thought of.
And would go to one of those kind of gigs to fulfil their dirty, stinking, perverted desires.
Yeah. I mean,
it's got to be a good thing, people. Get
I think
behind
you're
it.
right there. The argument is becoming more clear. I think you are right about the kind of the technology is getting better. But it just made me laugh that the British establishment seems about 9 steps behind everything. Obviously, the state is never as good as the private sector on a lot of this stuff. But I mean, when it comes to kind of the way that the police operate, I do get the feeling that they're kind of like, well, if they're not going to do it, we're going to have to do it.
But that's why this is an occasion when I give them full credit. I'm always bemoaning the fluffiness and the wokery and the liberalism and all that kind of stuff of senior police officers. But on this one, they've got it right.
Yeah.
Somebody somewhere has had the courage to say, in the absence of any instructions or laws from Parliament, we're going to roll it out. In other words, publish and be damned type thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're going to do it, and they can criticise, but we won't be moved. We're doing it, and full credit to them.
Like you say, they've now got the record to show that actually it's justified. You know, like you said, going down 1,000 arrests and 800 convictions. I mean, that is an astounding number of people. And I do think you're right that because more people are being victims of crime, more people are seeing crime or know somebody who's a victim of a crime, that it does change your perspective. It used to be called the Home Secretary syndrome. You know, there used to be this big lefty. They become Home Secretary, they're more right than Genghis Khan. Because you suddenly realise that actually not everybody in this country is a goodie.
Yes.
And I think that I think people are starting to see that and feel that actually we've pandered too much and we need to have a sense of safety and a sense of security. I think it's important we don't overreact. But I do think we're holding the line pretty steady, I have to admit. But
I noticed the way you pointed at me when you said overreact.
Oh, well, I did like that.
Of course, I want the police to have the tools they need, but only a police service that is deserving of those tools. And what I mean by that is that a police service that thoroughly vets people, only employs those that are suitable, trains them in-house and to a very, very high level, sets high standards and serves the public properly.
So that's like one police service then, maybe.
Really? Which one?
I don't know. This is the point. I'm struggling to name them. But, so anyway, you've convinced me. I have to admit.
Good.
And I mean, it takes a lot for me to change my opinion on some of this stuff, so congratulations. Anyway, after the break, we will be taking some of your calls, and we want to hear what you've got to say. If you do want to join us, then the number is 0344 499 1000. You can text us. Make sure to start with talk on 87222, and we will see you after this break.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Talk. I'm Peter Barnes and this is Breakfast. And now we are going to take some of your calls. I'm joined by the brilliant Peter Bleksley, who again is glad he's on that side of the table because he slightly terrifies me. But going straight to Daniel in Epsom, welcome to Talk. I see you want to talk about facial recognition.
Yeah, I just don't understand why. I mean, people in this country, when I was a little boy, I'm 48, when I was a little boy, we used to say to each other, it's a free country all the time. I can say what I like. Now it transpires that it's not a free country and I can't say what I like and I might get arrested and put in prison for it. And I have to live under facial recognition. Why would I have to lose my freedoms as an Englishman living in England, right? When I've never don't want it, I've never asked for it, and I have to do that off the back of successive governments not doing the things I've asked them to do. If you take, for example, ULEZ, right? Well, we have to bring ULEZ in and the congestion charge. Why do we? Well, because London's overcrowded and congested. Why is that? Well, we haven't controlled the borders. Well, I've told you to for 35, 40 years, but you didn't do it. It's a bit like when people say, yeah, you know, we have to live under this CCTV surveillance. It hasn't stopped any of the violence or the knife attacks in our big major cities, has it? Yet we're more surveilled than ever. If you think about, they say, well, you need to cut back on your water usage. Why do I? Well, there's far too many people using the water. Yeah, but we've been telling you for 30 or 40 years that we didn't want mass immigration into Britain. You ignored the people. Now we have to live with the consequences of your inaction.
Yeah, I have to admit, I do think you make a really good point here, that it does seem to me that, you know, it's successive governments make failures, and yet it is everybody else that seems to have to pay the price, not just financially. And I think you make a really good point here about actually there are other prices that we have to pay for incompetence or just sheer lunacy that these governments follow down on a policy line. I want to get Peter's perspective on this, because the idea that, you know, that we don't live in this free society and yet, you know, we live in an increasing police state, as many people would probably call it. I don't know. I'm so torn on this stuff. I really am, because my inner libertarian is saying, yes, he's right. Daniel's perfectly bang on. We are yet again losing our liberties. But then I listen to yourself, you know, an experienced lawman who's saying we need this stuff, and I don't know where we sit.
In my wildest imagination, I sit down with Dan from Epsom and have a few pints and right the wrongs of this world. What brilliant points he raises about repeated failings by our politicians, with the huge increase in population, the huge increase in crime rates and all of that. He's absolutely nailed on and makes a very compelling and difficult to argue against case. He raises particularly the point that I've said about facial recognition cameras, in that the politicians haven't created a framework. So the police have done it off their own backs, so to speak. OK. Dan, I'm not going off message, and I hope you don't think I'm giving a politician's kind of answer, because I'm not, Peter. I'm really not. But recently I went to Italy for a city break with my wife and some friends. We went to Rome. And, of course, I did some research before we went. Very fortunate to be able to go. Italy has got a population of about 10 million people less than us. OK, so it's not wildly different, not hugely different. And in the UK, collectively, in law enforcement, we've got 147,000 people involved. OK? In Italy, with their population 10 million less than us, they've got, guess how many people in law enforcement? 300,000. So twice as many. Wow. And guess what? Their crime rate is half of what ours is. So double the cops, half the crime rate. There you go. That's a fine example as to why we need this sort of stuff.
I think you're right.
And what
there.
our politicians should be doing.
Yes, I also think you make a really good point about, do you know what, there are simple solutions to things. Do you know, actually, if we just sit and look at the situation, if we have more police officers like they do in Italy, maybe our crime rate would be lower. I'd be interested, because I'm going to Italy on Monday, so I'm going to Milan, so I would be interested to see what this is like. But thanks, Dan. That's a brilliant call. Thank you so much for calling in. And next we're going to go to Barry from Norwich, who has a really good point, and I love this one, about the police service and a police force. Good morning, Barry.
I don't know if Peter will agree with me. Good morning. Yeah, I think the worst thing the police ever done was change their name from a police force to a police service. I think we need to go back home. There's no deterrent at home no more. Parents are not allowed to discipline their children. They're not allowed to do it. There's no deterrence in the school because the way kids talk to their school teachers, the way they might... I would never have done that when I was at school. You sat in silence. I was at school in the 70s and 1980s, and we had board rubbers, and you got one of them thrown at you. Yeah, there's no
everyone's reflexes are incredible in that age group. But I'm just going to say, Barry, it was quite interesting is that I'm 34, so I'm a little bit younger, but I tell you now, I am still terrified of my mother saying, "Really? That's how you're behaving?" I just that look. And you're so right that just doesn't exist anymore. And I do think you're right about the force and service. The same people that say that language is all powerful, language can cause harm, don't seem to have an answer to this one. But I've got to say, Peter, again, lawman through and through. Is this where it all went wrong?
Barry uses one of my favourite words, deterrent.
Yeah.
And we don't have deterrence in the criminal justice system.
We don't have deterrence at all.
You can see that. We just don't. Because, of course, deterrents are linked to discipline. And, of course, all those corners of public service where Blair's spies were sown and still occupy and run and rule and preside over us don't like the word discipline because it has connotations of telling people what they should do. They're all well and good telling us what to do about the language we should use, but, if we want to discipline our kids or discipline young people... Anyway, Barry, to that point, police force to police service. Some clown got promoted for putting forward that change. Yeah. Right? Some clown, right, who has risen without trace, who's failed upwards throughout their career, will inevitably have come up with that and got a promotion on the back of it. And the same clown and all the people that have followed him since have turned policing away from a crime-fighting force, which is what it should be, into this pseudo-social service that it is now. It's linked to their thinking. It wasn't just a name change, it's the way they were thinking. And look where that's got us.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. It's all... Sorry, do go ahead, Barry.
Just one more thing. I mean, when I was a kid, I was getting it scrapes from, being a 13, 14-year-old. Yeah, and the police officers knew us by name around our area. I mean, they had a little police station on the street. There was little police stations dotted around the city as well as the big main one. Now Norwich hasn't even got a main police station anymore. The main police station out in Norwich is 15 miles away. Norwich does not have a police station no more.
How is that a thing? That's incredible.
The nearest police station is at a place called Wyndham. Norwich police station shuts at 4 o'clock in the evening and opens again at 9 o'clock the next morning.
Oh my God, it's like a bank. It's crazy. But sorry, I'm just going to say, Barry, I think you bring up a great point there, Peter, because it's not just how the police behave, it's how the public have reacted to the police now they're a service. They have started to demand things that it's not the police's job to do. And I think that the entire dynamic has changed. But Barry, that's a great call. Thank you so much for calling in.
And those same stupid people that changed not only the name from a force to a service, but turned policing into a social service in so many regards. They've presided over the utter demise of policing as it was, and largely because they're so stupid they think policing is a popularity contest.
Oh, yes.
Right? They really do. It's why they have all their engagements and flag waving and dancing and all that nonsense. Policing most definitely is not a popularity contest. In fact, policing should pride itself on being unpopular, particularly with criminals, who, as you remember from the previous hour, I hate, and I suspect somebody might report me for a non-crime hate incident, because I'll say it again, I hate criminals, I hate criminals, I hate criminals. Now go and report that to as many police services as you like.
I'm going to say, the fact that I've not been brought up on one, it staggers me, but when it comes to popularity contests, I don't really want to spend too much time on this because it's not, for me, I think it's just a farce. There are serious connotations, but, Jeremy Corbyn, the man who will not go away, Magic Grandpa, as he was once called, when they all sang, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," that didn't seem so bad considering what I last saw at the Glastonbury this year. But, he's back with a bang. The New Left Party, the Zara Sultana has split away from Labour. What I find quite interesting is they basically were packing her bags for her. They seem very happy to be rid of her. But they're building this new lefty party, but Diane Abbott's not joining, John McDonnell's not joining, so all the usual clowns are still hanging about. But, it's interesting. I don't know about you, Peter, but I don't think we need another political party. But what's more interesting is for the Labour Party and how they kind of put themselves back together, because we talk about the Tories splitting up, but, you've got Andy Burnham probably on manoeuvre. Sadiq Khan is clearly on manoeuvre. Oh, that guy. I know. I'm ruining everybody's day. It's my job here. But, again, the Labour Party is just as at war with itself as every other political party. But this New Left one, I think, could do a little bit of damage if the Labour Party aren't smart enough, well, they're not, to actually kind of cut this off at the knees.
But bizarrely, we're talking about a party that's in government with 144 majority.
And it's a year. It's a year.
Right? And it's a year into it. It's utterly bizarre. Zara Sultana, the one woman who's on a single-handed mission to lower the regard, the respect and the attitudes of people towards MPs. And she's doing a very, very good job of it. That woman should not be anywhere near Parliament.
Yes. Could not agree more.
Absolute disgrace. So she's going to go off to raise some other kind of party. I don't think they've got a name for it.
No, I don't think they have. My favourite thing is that she was very smart, to give her a little bit of credit, and she announced that she was a co-leader. Corbyn's lost his mind over this because he had a very different idea as who was in charge and who wasn't. But it's quite smart because she knew that she would get bullied out of the room. So she's announced it before he's had a chance to get his trousers on, probably too busy down at his allotment, with his friends from Hezbollah or wherever. It's just crazy that we are still back dealing with this individual. I mean, a friend of mine is a Labour strategist, and he said he would rather have Jeremy Corbyn lost his seat than they have won that general election. There is a real hatred of the new kind of Labour Party, whatever that might look like, of Jeremy Corbyn and his kind. They thought they were rid of him, and they were never rid of that man.
Well, it's now getting on for 8 hours or so since Palestine Action became a prescribed terrorist organisation. I wouldn't be surprised if this lot take the word action and put it into their title.
Oh, yes, that's something a very good point. Yeah, because she tweeted, didn't she, that we are all Palestine Action. Speak for yourself, thank you.
Yeah.
Very
well,
much.
Tweet that today and you'll get nigged.
I remember last week I was like, how are MPs very comfortable saying this now? Because we're so close to it being prescribed and it now being illegal. But I'm so happy you're sticking around, Peter, because next we're going to go through the sports stories. I am going to make Alex Phillips look informed on sport. So do stick around because you're going to love this.
The first year of his premiership has been a menagerie of flip-flops, U-turns, embarrassment and lies. He has no courage of conviction. He, to such a degree, Ian, that he's not even got any loyalty from his own backbench. He has had this country in a precarious predicament, neglecting our defences, welcoming fighting-age legal migrants in their droves into the bosom of our country, and putting our country and its people at risk of attack. He's put his arm around the pensioners, the farmers, waspy women.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to breakfast. I'm Peter Barnes, and you are about to watch the most embarrassing moment of my life as I am shown to know nothing about sport. It's not that I don't care, it's just it somehow passes me by, and I'm so happy that Will Hobbs from TalkSport is here to explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old, because that is what you're going to have to do.
I mean, I don't have to be here, because this guy on my right...
I was going to say, yeah, we are still joined by Peter, who was deliberately kept... he was deliberately asked to be here because they're scared that I don't know anything. We're not even kidding around on this. It is absolutely terrifying how little I know, but there is one story that it's clocked on my radar, and that is Diogo Jota.
Yes.
I mean, that story is just heartbreaking from start to finish.
It is. I had to break that story on Thursday morning. News came through in the early hours, originally broken by Marca, the Spanish newspaper, that the car that he was driving alongside his brother, another professional footballer, Andre Silva, was engulfed in flames. Police say they were overtaking another vehicle. There's a problem with the tyre, and then the car just was engulfed. He's 28 years old, just won the Premier League, got married 10 days before. The funeral today is in their hometown near Porto in Portugal. Liverpool have postponed their pre-season. The players are there. Arne Slot, the manager's there as well. There have been countless tributes from former managers, teammates, fans, and I think what's been really striking, having covered this on talkSport, just the number of people who've called in, the number of people who support different clubs, people who support Everton, Manchester United, everyone. There are millions of people around the world who feel like they know Diogo Jota.
Yeah.
Such was his reach, because of the way football is, because of the landscape, because of how it unites people. Football tribalism just put aside, as all kinds of fans just coming together and honouring a great player, but a father of 3, a wonderful husband, and a really humble guy who had time for a lot of people, and of course his brother Andre. So it will be... I've got a friend who works at Liverpool. He says, I don't know how long this will take for us to get over this. They play their first game at Anfield of the Premier League in August. I'm sure there'll be a rapturous send-off, but... yeah, no words.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I mean, it's just one of those stories. Sorry, that it just gets worse. Yeah. Like, you know, he's just got married, father of 3, just won the Premier League. Like, you know, this guy is at the height of what should be an amazing life, and it's just been cut short so dramatically.
Picking up on what Will said about the outpouring from so many supporters of different clubs. You see, now in 2025, with the modern game being televised as much as it is, these players come into our lounges every week. We get to see them. It's not like when I was a child and there was barely any football on the television. So there is a greater connect. Yeah. People see them, they see their talent, they have an appreciation for it, even if they're on an opposing team, and consequently there is that greater connection, I feel.
And Liverpool as a city and as a club have just gone through so much more tragedy, you feel, than the average club. Obviously Hillsborough a few decades ago, and then when they won the Premier League title this summer, there was that car that just ran through crowds, and luckily no fatalities there, but that sent shockwaves and shivers through the city.
I grew up not far from Liverpool, and there's one thing I will always give that city: the way that it rallies around each other when something bad happens is admirable and astonishing to me every single time. I think it is one of the great things about Liverpool. I really do. But Yes, so again, sporting knowledge, very little. Explain to me what's happening at Wimbledon, because I just know it for Pims. But yeah, that's about as much as you get from me, I'm afraid.
So Andy Murray, back in the day, he used to absolutely tear up Wimbledon, set the centre court alight. We hadn't had a champion for decades before Andy Murray. He won 2 Wimbledon titles. Jack Draper was kind of the heir apparent, and he's now sort of getting towards his pomp, and he exited in the second round a couple of days ago. And Emma Raducanu in the women's draw, she burst onto the scene, aged 18, won the US Open out of nowhere on her A-level summer.
That I do know. Yeah, that I did know.
Absolutely remarkable. I was speaking to Peter earlier, she's had 3 injuries since then which have required surgery. She's had a really torrid time of it. She's got so much slack from
She's a British tennis player, of course.
From the British media, of course. They like to just pile in at any opportunity. She's back to her best now. Age 22, absolutely thrilling performance yesterday against the world #1. She came up just short, but I was watching her. I don't think centre court has been louder than that since the great days of Andy Murray. I mean, Aryna Sabalenka, such a powerful hitter, 3-time Grand Slam winner, the best player in the world. Emma Raducanu had her on toast at periods.
Yeah.
She broke early in the first set. She had a 4-2 lead in the first set. She had a 4-1 lead in the second set, but Sabalenka showing her true class. And Sabalenka's the first player since Serena Williams to get to the 4th round of a Grand Slam, 11 tournaments on the trot. So she was playing against an absolute brute in Sabalenka, but she really did herself proud. And again, I was talking to Peter. Mark Petchey's her coach, who's a former British player, renowned commentator. He's actually taken time out from his commentary to work with Emma on a part-time basis. It looks like that partnership. She's been through so many coaches.
Yeah.
I think it's really galvanised.
I'm going to say, I don't know a lot. Tennis is the one I do actually dip into every now and then, but even I know about the number of coaches. Yeah. That seems astonishing to me, because you'd think that relationship is so tight and so needing to be like basically a hand and glove situation.
Particularly,
that, you know, particularly like a single person sport. Like with teams, there's lots of other factors, but, you know, when it's a single player sport, and to go through that many coaches is amazing to me.
But if it doesn't work, it's very damaging.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think this is credit to her. When a situation hasn't worked, she's moved on, and she's moved on swiftly.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take issue with you, Will, this early on a Saturday morning.
Go on.
I don't think she's back to her best. I think there is more to come. What I saw in her second round match and what I saw in times last night against Sabalenka, there's more to come. She can get better. At one point when she was sitting down during a break, her right knee was vibrating up and down, very, very quickly. She was wasting nervous energy. I'm sure Mark Petchey's going to look back on the telly, and they're going to work on not only the physical side of her game, and my word, her ability and her strength is utterly astonishing. There's more to come, and I'll say it here, and I'll say it now, and you can hold me to this. Emma Raducanu is going to win more major championships.
Peter, and I'll qualify the statement. I would say she is back to her best of what we've seen from her. I don't think she's reached her ceiling. Absolutely not. And as you said, I think Mark Petchey, I think that relationship's a really healthy one. Obviously, having won that Grand Slam, when she was playing at the US Open 3 years ago or 4 years ago, she had no pressure because no one knew her.
Yeah.
And then ever since, all eyes have been on her, so she's had to deal with that.
Yeah,
and I just feel now...
I do notice this, that they kind of become rather kind of cult celebrities very quickly. They're thrust into the public eye with very little young age, very little help, very little aid is given to them. You know, unless they've got the kind of resources to kind of navigate a very what can be hostile media. And I'd have to admit, it is always impressive to me. But apparently the Lions are back in action in Australia as the players continue to battle it out in the Test match selection.
Correct. The British and Irish Lions, have you heard of them?
Yes, I have. Yes,
okay, good. Yeah, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. Well, only one Welsh player, but he's very good, Jack Morgan. They're playing their third tour match of their tour in Australia. The Test match is just a couple of weeks away now. I've got a friend actually from my time at Durham University, Jamie Adamson. He just went for a year in Australia, got picked up by the club, the Waratahs, and he's actually playing against the Lions today, lad from Durham. So he's looking forward to the end of the game where he'll swap shirts with hopefully some of his England heroes. So good luck there, Jamie. I think, so the Lions is such a unique thing in sport, and every game leading up to the Test series, they play 3 Test matches against the Wallabies. All the warm-up games are dress rehearsals, are auditions. So they're playing as a team, but they're also playing for their places. They're trying to impress coaches, impress teammates, and get the better of their teammates in some way. So it's fascinating to see how that knits together and how they build that synergy when they're all trying to compete individually as well. I think the big selections today, Hugo Keane, the Irish fullback, and Blair Kinghorn. Elliot Daly, the England fullback, he's injured, so he's out. So these are the two fullbacks probably jostling for selection, and they haven't played a game yet on tour. Henry Pollock is a rambunctious kind of 20-year-old flanker,
word, by the way.
who he's just so boisterous, so confident. Or is he number 8, or is he number 6?
Peter, is there anything you don't know? I'm just sat here like, we've just gone talking from face covering and policing matters to just font of knowledge.
But Henry Pollock, he's like an Emirati Raducanu from a few years ago. No one knew about him. He barely played a professional game a year ago, and now he's playing at the absolute pinnacle of rugby for the Lions, and he's got a great shout at selection, actually. He's taken it to it like a duck to water. Then you got Marcus Smith on the bench. Owen Farrell was the big story of this week. Andy Farrell, the coach, brought in Owen Farrell, his son, even though Owen Farrell's barely played any rugby for the last few years, but he's in, and Marcus Smith's probably the one who suffers from that, so he's probably third choice fly half, Marcus Smith, but he will get a chance off the bench today, and probably, if he is going to feature in the test matches, Marcus Smith, it will be in that capacity, in that 23 jersey, so it's quite a nice audition for him, because if he can get on the pitch and sparkle, then he can put his hand up as a genuine option on the bench for the test matches.
Interesting. Now, I've got a fun fact. I actually used to play rugby against Owen Farrell when he played for Wigan St Patrick's. I played rugby league for a long time, and back up in Wigan, and he was like, we were the two rival teams, and it's really weird to watch him like on the TV, which I say hilariously because I'm literally sat on the TV right now.
I'm sure he's watching this as well.
Oh yeah, of course. He probably
feels the same.
He's probably nursing those bruises where you tackled him.
Yeah, exactly. But I was one of those people. I then went on to be a referee instead. Because I realised that I'd rather be paid for it than anything else. But I have to admit that all of this stuff is it does go over my head. But I know, listening to you guys, the passion to which you talk about all this stuff. And Will, thank you very much for coming in and joining us. And I hope I didn't embarrass myself too much with any of that. But we're just going to go to a quick break now, and we will be back right after this. Oh, right. Sorry, my fault. I didn't realise we'd got another couple of minutes. So, quickly, with Wimbledon, Hawkeye, explain what's going on there, because have they got rid of it? Have they not? Because somebody was complaining about climate change in Hawkeye and the news just the other day, and then you had all the getting rid of the Lions people that could shout out for no reason or something.
They've dispensed with line judges, and they rely entirely on technology now. And it's a bit of a shame, because I used to like watching those line judges bent over, resplendent in their uniform.
It was very British.
Yes, and then sometimes getting it wrong and all that stuff. But they've all been dispensed with now. So your kind of entertainment off court comes from the ball boys and girls who are still brilliant and disciplined and absolutely do a remarkable job.
They really do. They're all from schools in the area, aren't they? If I remember rightly.
I think so. But there's a selection process, and I know that hundreds upon hundreds apply, and yet only a couple of hundred are good enough.
Yeah, I have to admit, the way that I've seen it, there's compilations of it, where they get hit with the tennis balls. Yeah. I because they're going over 100 miles an hour.
140, 150 mile an hour.
And yet they stand there and they seem fine. You know they're not fine because you can see it behind the eyes. They're like, don't make a move, don't do anything. And I'm like, that's got to hurt.
But you imagine going home, rolling up your shorts and going, that bruise is from Carlos Alcaraz.
I know, that's amazing. But also, I love it when the actual players go over to them and actually show it is everybody's involved in the game. I know that's kind of like a soppy comment, but it's sport is a great way of bringing people together.
Anyway, we forgot to mention Sonny Cartel, right? Another British player. She's through to the 4th round. Absolute pocket rocket, short, dynamic. She's got some very individual tattoos. She's a fabulous character.
At Wimbledon?
Yes, of course. Yeah. She's a fabulous character from what I've seen, and she's in at the 4th round. And of course, we've got a male. What's his name? I forget his name. Who's in the men's still. So still plenty of British interest.
Oh. Brilliant. Right, OK, so we're going to try again, and we're going to throw to break, and we will see you after this. Oh, now there's 30 seconds. My God, this sports section is going to be the absolute death of me, I swear. I know nothing, and I can talk to you for hours. Yes, and we're going to say a great, finally, just something for me to talk about. Sadly, last we see of Peter today. Thank you so much for keeping me company and for your brilliant contributions, and I wish you good luck on the tour.
Thank you.
And, good luck with everything. And, yes, I've got a 3rd time's the charm. There we go. 3rd time lucky.
just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field." Put your foot down, this rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talk. I am Peter Barnes. I'm filling in for Alex Phillips. Welcome to breakfast, and we made it through to 8 o'clock. I mean, I'm not going to lie, the sports section, not my finest hour, but we made it through, thanks to everybody in the gallery who has been consistently laughing at me because I have no clue on sport. I made that very clear when I agreed to do this. However, it has been a fascinating morning. We've covered everything from 1 year of Starmer. We're looking at Jeremy Corbyn back. You know, we've got so much to talk about, and I am absolutely delighted that we have got Ryan Saby, the Deputy Political Editor of The Sun, who is going to join us now. Ryan, good morning. Welcome to Talk.
Good morning to you.
How are we doing? I mean, after everything we've gone through this week, I feel like Hollow Willoughby. Are you okay?
Right, exactly. There was a lot of stuff going on Monday and Tuesday when we had those welfare U-turns. It seems like a long, long time ago. And I think everyone just needed to see Oasis on stage last night just to relax and decompress after a pretty torrid week.
Yeah, I'm going to say, they say don't look back in anger, but I mean, there's a lot of anger in this nation right now, and it's mainly directed at Keir Starmer after 1 year. Can you believe it's only been a year? It's astounding to me.
Yeah, no, exactly. You can roll off the list and of what's happened with his government, particularly in those first, we go back to the first few months. You look at those early decisions, whether it was that taking away winter fuel allowance for pensioners or most of them. There was the freebie gate. There was the Lord Addy scandal. What happened to Sue Gray? So I feel in some ways that kind of just set the tone a little bit for this government. And then after that, we've had just in the last few weeks, we've had that retreat on winter fuel. We've then had the big welfare decisions this week. And I think with the welfare thing, I think it just showed how sort of sort of the party management angle and the sort of lack of control of that party was really brought to the fore there.
Yes, I could not agree more. I could say you'll know better than most that the absolute circus that was number 10 under Boris Johnson. But what we're seeing at this number 10, it makes Boris's years look absolutely, like they were like waters off a duck's back. I mean, I have never seen a more catastrophic political operation than we are seeing right now. The mess that everything that this government touches is, when it leaves its path, is just amazing to me. From the farmers' family tax to the winter fuel allowance. I mean, I remember that being announced. I was like, that is a political disaster waiting to happen. Everybody saw it, and the Labour Party went, we're just going to do it anyway. The phrase "hold my beer" has never been more accurate.
Yeah. I think with one of these things, perhaps they were under. They felt like they were under a lot of pressure to find some money. But I think in a lot of circumstances that winter fuel didn't raise that much money. The farmers' tax doesn't raise that money. So they've gone through this whole raft of pain actually, and they've not really got very much from it. And also, when you look at the national insurance hikes as well. Although it does a lot of heavy lifting, it raises £25 billion. I speak to business groups quite a lot, and the feeling there is that things are really, really tough, and they're only just going to get tougher. They're particularly concerned about the employment rights package that is due to come in. Now, the government have said it's going to come in over 2 years. It's not going to be all in one go, but I think once you start adding the national minimum wage rise, the national insurance rise, there's this packaging tax that they have to contend with. There's lots of things going on, and we saw a report from the CBI just last week, which showed that business pessimism was on its sort of longest streak for in recent years. So there's lots of stuff to contend with sort of within the business community, which obviously feeds in through to people's jobs. So.
Yeah, you bang on. I find it interesting you bring up the CBI, because I remember being at the conference, and the level of hatred towards Rachel Reeves was on another level. They warned about the national insurance rise. They warned what would happen, and the government again just ignored it and moved forward, and as though like any kind of concern was an irrelevancy to them. But I mean, of one issue that this country I think is at the top of the list that they care about is obviously immigration. We saw the situation with the French police officer finally finding a Stanley knife. I mean, for 80 million quid that we've given them, one Stanley knife doesn't seem too much to ask. And a rather convenient BBC journalist stood there, up to his midriff in the sea, handily with a camera. I mean, the country is looking at this issue and they're just seeing a catastrophe. I mean, again, circuses have got more organisation to them than this.
I think the trouble is you've had high numbers when it comes to illegal migration, and that is just coupled with those images that we see every most days, or certainly over the summer, where you have so many people coming over on small boats. Just this year we've reached 20,000, and I think it's not the fact that the numbers are so high. It's the fact that politicians, from either stripe, whether it's Rishi Sunak said he was going to stop the boats. We've had Sir Keir Starmer saying that he's going to smash the gangs, and we just seem to be getting further and further away from that. Yeah. However, the French maybe I don't know, but maybe that they're starting to pull their finger out, and laws in France are starting to be changed. So actually, the French police officers or the border force officials can actually go into the water up to about 300 meters and actually effectively burst these inflatable dinghies. And I think one thing that might do is then send the signal to other migrants who are thinking about spending, €10,000, £10,000, or several £1,000s just to come over. They may actually think again, because at the moment it doesn't seem like there's that deterrent. Whereas Rishi Sunak was going to bring in the Rwanda deterrent, Sir Keir Starmer didn't. But I think this is also interesting, the timing of this. That we've seen these images and they're broadcast over. The BBC. You said there was a BBC cameraman there. We've seen the pictures in the papers this morning. There's a big summit this week coming up. Yes. Emmanuel Macron will come to this country, and there will be lots of pomp. There'll be lots of pageantry. But one thing as well, there'll be meetings between Sir Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, and at the end of that, there will have to be some kind of deal that is struck, or an improvement on the deal that has been struck on sorting this problem out. So that's why I think you've seen a lot of this being ramped up in recent weeks, because Emmanuel Macron has got to come to this country. He doesn't want to face as much criticism as what he needs to. So I think that's why you've seen a little bit of action.
Yeah,
but it has been
I think you're right there. I do
much.
think you're right. With Macron's visit, impending, one thing I do find interesting is that Macron seems to be moving away from the European Union's rather staunch line on this. I find that, I'm often wondering if, obviously Starmer, I think, is reacting to reform and Nigel Farage's dominance on this issue. Do you think Macron is reacting on this issue because of his domestic politics situation? Because, everyone seems to think that the European Union is all wonderful. However, they're just as divided on this issue and just as in much chaos as we are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see what's happening all across Europe. And I think one thing in particular is what Italy are doing, and having that sort of that bilateral deal with Albania. Keir Starmer was out in Albania recently. He's trying to set up talks with other sort of Balkan states, whether it's North Macedonia or the like, to actually get these individual deals with other countries. So I think what Britain or France, Italy may well be doing is trying to set up these bilateral deals, because moving as a bloc when you've got 27 countries, it's pretty hard. You can't just act, on a whim. Everything has to go effectively through committee. So I think that's why you're seeing so many countries actually just think, we need to be nimble on this. This is really affecting us. This is affecting who's ever in charge. It's affecting their poll rating. So they have to be very, very concerned about that, and they have to act on it. Yeah,
I think you're absolutely spot on there. But back to kind of the craziness of Westminster. When you think it couldn't get more insane, we have the return of Jeremy Corbyn and yet another political party. I mean, credit to Sarah Sultana, for getting out there ahead of Corbyn, making sure that she's not an irrelevancy in this. I've always said you shouldn't underestimate her. She's a very powerful campaigner. She's got quite a big support behind her in her own little clique, a little world is more accurate, I suppose. But this just seemed to be yet again a little bit more chaos, a little bit more kind of Westminster playing its games again, whilst we've got the immigration crisis, we've got the economy on the brink, and yet again politicians seem more interested in navel-gazing than actually doing something for the British public. I mean, what's your reading of the situation? Because from what I speak to with people in Westminster, they are exhausted of all of this stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of... I think the thing with this is that Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana, there is a firm political base for them, and there's a lot of support out there. When I say a lot, we're talking maybe 5, 6, 7%, of people in the country who could back a party that they set up. And I think that creates big problems for Sir Keir, actually. I think the problems lie with the fact that, politics is splintered in this country. You look at, the Reform Party on one side, you've got the Greens, you've got sort of lots of independents in this country, and then you could have a brand new party. It just adds to another headache. And Keir Starmer, he didn't come in on a huge huge public support. It was 35% public backing at the elections. You got even though he had 165 seat, he's got 165 seat majority in the Commons, it doesn't actually relate to sort of massive popularity in the country. So I think just adding another party into the mix just will add to that, that fracturing of where British politics is. And when you're sort of stuck in the middle, where you don't quite know on what issue to tack right to or tack left to, I think there's a problem. And I think there'll be an issue, from the likes of Jeremy Corbyn or Zara Sultana and lots in the fair good number in the Labour Party when it comes to sort of issues such as scrapping the two-child benefit cap.
Yeah, that issue, I tell you now, has been a thorn in the Labour Party's side for quite some time. Economically, they're doing the right thing, but I imagine at their core, in what it is to be a Labour Party MP and a Labour Party supporter, they cannot feel comfortable with this at all. They really can't. And I think we've seen it with the with their inability to cut even just a little off the welfare budget. I mean, for them to sit with that, I mean, all credit to them, to give them something, because, you know, I do think economically it is the right thing to do. But it's interesting, we're not just seeing these fractures on the left. You've got Ben Habib running around and Rupert Lowe, they're off splitting the right, who is more fractured than I've ever seen. I always joke, you get 10 Tories in a room, I'll give you 1,000 opinions. I mean, the Westminster at the moment, it's just everybody's everywhere. And because of that, nothing seems to be getting done.
Yeah, no, it's very, very difficult. And that's why I think, you know, over the next few years, we'll be looking at, coalitions of some sort. Who can sign up to an electoral pact the quickest, whether it's the Conservatives or Reform on the right, or whether it's Labour and maybe some kind of agreement later on down the line. We're talking a few years away with the Liberal Democrats to prop them up, because politics is just becoming so fractured here. And I think when it come back to that 2-child benefit cap, there will be a lot of clamour for that. There already is from within the Labour Party and from these other parties on the left. But Rachel Reeves gave them a pretty stern warning this week. She's done an interview, and she's talking about the cost of making those welfare U-turns. Is that the message to those rebels is, you've kind of spent that money already. You kind of have to own that decision. That £4 or £5 billion that you could have had to reverse that has gone. And that is why she's warning this morning that taxes will have to go up. We'll give her a pretty strong hint that taxes will have to go up.
I'd like to know where, though. Because I don't know about you, I can't feel like we've already been taxed. I think I always say the pips have squeaked, because everything just seems to be push money, squeeze, and squeeze. There is no drive behind the economic agenda of this government. Nobody seems to be really leading on it. Rachel Reeves is nowhere. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, she's pretty much finished politically. And I think economically, I don't think she was ever in the room in the first place. But, you know, governments need a strong economic drive. And they also need a voice to be that, to guide it and to keep people in line and to bring people on board. The government doesn't have anyone of any kind of clout in the public eye at the moment. And I think that's what they're missing.
Yeah, I think one of the troubles for this Labour government, they are obviously so desperate to get into power, is that they did box themselves in a little bit, during that election campaign in that manifesto as well, when they said they weren't going to raise money on income tax, they weren't going to raise national insurance on individuals, and VAT wasn't going to go up. You couple that with the sort of fiscal rules, those tough rules that the Chancellor has set. You also marry that up with the fact that economic growth could be downgraded in the coming weeks and months. And it looks like the Chancellor will only have one way to go, and that will be to put up taxes and maybe try and find some more spending cuts. But one sort of trickery, kind of stealth tax rule that she could push for is extending those thresholds on on income tax, which actually drags more people into paying tax, because you keep the level the same. More inflation goes up, more people will come to pay that. So I think that's one thing, because that will probably raise around £10 billion. There'll be other things like, we campaign a lot. There's on fuel duty. There's a big piece in the paper today by my colleague Martina Bett talking about fuel duty. We haven't seen a rise in that in 14 years. So that'll be one big thing that no doubt that
I can imagine that's been on the chopping block for some time, and they're just waiting. That's like one of the best hands that they've got, really. But it just really staggered me that this all seems to come down to a really fundamental problem with the Labour Party, is they don't know how to get growth. They don't seem to understand it. They keep saying the word, and they just hope that it will happen. There's no kind of plan. And I've said for this country for a long time, even under the Conservatives, no industrial strategy. We've got this economy and it is flailing in the wind. And because no one's been guiding it and forcing it down certain avenues, and having joined up government and policies all directed in one way, we are in this situation. A lot of it is obviously of our own making, but, it really does get me that there is nobody really across the political spectrum with the economic credibility that we need right now, because this is a start buying tinned goods situation. We're even talking IMF bailout territory. This is really serious stuff.
Yeah, I think one thing that the government would say, look kind of what we've done over the past sort of few weeks, months. They've had the spending review, the trade strategy, the industrial strategy, had trade deals with America, the European Union, and India. So I think what they were trying to do is sort of say, look, we've tried to pave the way. But I think as we mentioned just now about business confidence is
it's non-existent.
It's tough out there. And I think one thing they could do, one thing the government could actually do, is actually send a signal to business to say that, look, perhaps we can, we brought in the national insurance rise this in the last year. Perhaps we can signal that, in 3 years' time, we want to bring that back down. Perhaps they could bring, on corporation tax, do something on that, just to send a signal to business that we're on your side. And I come back to the employment rights bill as well. Perhaps stand up for business on that a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Because, like you said,
there is room for manoeuvre, and I think that's one thing the business community would like to see.
Yeah, definitely. It is, for me, it's all about fiscal credibility as well. I mean, Rachel Reeves crying in the Commons has done nothing to help that situation. But also, the next day, they wheeled her out like some kind of old Soviet dictator. Look, she's still alive kind of situation. Covered in makeup. Like, she's fine, everything is fine. I love that rule. If you have to tell people everything is fine, it's not fine.
I'm just going to counter that. And I think the markets actually like Rachel Reeves.
Oh, they do. Yes, that is very true. Because in my theory, it's because they're terrified of what comes next. Do you know? At least her sticking to the fiscal rules, I will give her credit for. And the markets love that, and the city loves it because it is stability. And they are terrified of Angela Rayner and God knows who else actually ends up being Chancellor. Because now I'm struggling to name anybody in the cabinet, who's got the clout to actually take on this mess. But honestly, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so informative, and good luck, because I tell you right now, Westminster is a horrible place to be right now. But do stick with us here at Talk. We'll be going through your voice notes next, and stick with us after this break.
The first year of his premiership has been a menagerie of flip-flops, U-turns, embarrassment and lies. He has no courage of conviction. He, to such a degree, Ian, that he's not even got any loyalty from his own backbench. He has had this country in a precarious predicament, neglecting our defences, welcoming fighting-age legal migrants in their droves into the bosom of our country, and putting our country and its people at risk of attack. He's put his arm around the pensioners, the farmers, waspy women.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talk. I'm Peter Barnes, filling in for Alex Phillips. So, we have covered pretty much everything you can think of this morning. You know, I embarrassed myself on the sports section, and I apologise, Dad. I still know nothing about sport. However, we're going to go through your voice notes because Talk is as much yours as it is mine. So, let's start off right at the top. We'll go with Vince, who wants to talk about CCTV.
Good morning, Vince from Cumbria. Great show as usual. I just want to say, unless you're a criminal, what are you afraid of? If they capture your face and you're not a criminal, they'll just delete the data. But and if you are a criminal, well, unlucky. Anyway, good luck with it. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Vince, but I tell you now, my big fear is always a civil servant leaving that data on a train. You don't have to worry about China hacking us or Iran or anything like that. The incompetence of the British state will make sure that, that data ends up somewhere where it shouldn't be. That's always been my concern there. But, yeah, so we'll go with Jennifer next, talking about Starmer.
Good morning, Peter. Regarding Starmer saying that he's one hard B, that actually just shows you how weak and out of control that man really is. Because people that are hard, they really do not have to speak a word.
I could not agree more. Thank you for that, Jennifer. I couldn't agree more. I always go back to the old Marilyn Monroe quote. If you have to tell people you're a woman or a lady, then you aren't one. I think that's so true with power. Powerful people do not have to say they're powerful. People who are, in charge don't have to tell people that they're in charge. They show it through their actions. And Keir Starmer, I'm sorry, you're just not in control anymore. I don't think you really ever have been, if I'm being brutally honest. Anyway, we'll go with Annie next, and she wants to talk about facial recognition.
Hello, Annie from Kent here. What use is facial recognition when you've got whole towns and cities full of young men in hoodies and masks and women walking around in burqas? Lovely programme. Bye.
Thank you, Annie. And I think you make a really good point there. We talk about... I have this thing where people talk about the burqa ban and they broaden it out to face coverings. Have the courage to talk about the burqa ban. It's a really important debate. It's about multiculturalism. It's about the expansion of the British society and all this kind of stuff. Have the courage of your convictions to talk about it. Stop hiding behind facial coverings, but which is just as an important issue, but you're not really talking about what you want to talk about. Anyway, we'll just... last one, we'll go with Hev next.
Good morning, gents. It's Heath here from Kent. Just heard Peter saying about going to Italy and the number of police enforcement and la-da-da-da. And I do agree. But on the other hand, what is the damn point when we haven't got the courts that back the police? I know two policemen that work for different counties, and both of them are just absolutely livid with what's going on. They just don't understand. There's no sense to it. But it's the courts that are letting us down. I feel so sorry for the police. They have such a hard job, and all the crime that's going on, and the imported crime especially, is beyond their reach. They cannot do what they can't do. If they haven't got the numbers, but then they haven't got the backing from the courts, what's the point of any of it?
I think that's so right. The courts are often kind of ignored, but I don't think we can ignore the courts anymore, particularly on the issue of immigration. We've got some running around thinking that they're allowing everybody to stay here. The concept of this country ever denying an asylum seeker request, I just find laughable. And it is all because of judicial activism, because we have no control over the courts. There's no way to bring this law, not really into line, but actually into the line of British thinking, of what the actual public think on this issue. And I'll tell you now, there's one chap here, I'm very happy to be joined by Charlie Rowley, and, you've been in the heart of government, you've seen it from the inside, and do you not think that this government right now is the product of just one disaster after the next, wrapped up in chaos, then wrapped in another layer of just hypocrisy? I can't think of a worse time I've ever seen a government have.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. Good morning.
Good morning.
And I think that's reflective in the polls, not just in the polls of the Labour Party, but in Keir Starmer's own personal ratings. He's clearly someone who if I was going to be generous, as I often can
you're
be,
a much nicer person than I am.
on a Saturday morning, I don't think he is a bad person. I think he's probably actually quite a decent person, family man that protects his family and kids. You don't see them often in the limelight. I think he might be someone that occasionally, if you walked into a pub, if you ever saw him in a pub, although I'm not quite sure he does go to
Well,
the
the
pub
last
that
one he
often.
ran into, he got chased out of, didn't he?
He got chased out, but you'd expect him to be just the sort of, the quiet man in the corner, and you might just say, hi, hi kid, how are you doing? Good weekend, thanks very much, and you'll go and have fun, because I don't think you have much fun with Keir Starmer. It doesn't strike you that's kind of man. But he's not a leader, and he has taken decisions in terms of government, I think, issue by issue, as they sort of come across his desk as a lawyer, as someone that tries to weigh up all of the arguments, that tries, and whatever discussions are happening in Number 10 about the political fallout from those decisions. So, giving overinflation, busting pay rises to public sector workers, because obviously that's the only thing that will stop the strikes. Well, actually, it doesn't, and it won't, because obviously, as we've seen in the last just a couple of months, doctors have come back for more, and they'll say they'll go on strike again. So it doesn't work, but he sees that as a decision, a good decision for the economy, for working people, and all of this other rhetoric that is put before him in terms of the lines to take, scripts that are written and signed off by political wonks and insiders of the Labour Party, of the Labour left, who think that will resonate with the public, and it has spectacularly backfired. Not to mention all of the, over-obvious way of hypocrisy is the word I was looking for. Saying to Boris Johnson time and time again, that he has presided over incompetence and chaos, that he was going to run a government of stability and integrity, and then goes and takes a load of free suits and glasses and tickets and all the rest of it.
Do you know, I actually forgot about that. With all the chaos and everything else combined, I actually, it just kind of slipped to the back of my mind. I think that really did sum up where this government was going to go wrong from the very beginning, because it didn't get why the public was angry at that.
Yes.
They never understood. Well, they were like, well, we followed the rules. I said, that's not the point. You've missed it entirely. And it's more along the lines that they didn't care that they didn't understand. They just moved on. I've noticed this quite a lot. They make a mistake and they just keep moving on. They don't talk about the mistakes. They just pretend they never happened.
And I think that's absolutely right. I think that's the gaslighting of the British public. So, to go on to make a huge statement to the public in Downing Street, behind the lectern, to call basically all of us far right. If you've got a problem with what's going on in this country, if you've got a problem with the riots that took place in Southport, you're part of the far right bandwagon. Then to have to reverse ferret on that, because actually it turned out, as a internal report concluded, it wasn't far right activism. And by the way, as Rachel Reeves said in a justification on a Sunday afternoon, show that she's not going to be upset by people who felt upset by hurty words. Well, calling people far right, they've actually got a problem about immigration, the number one issue in this country. People have got a problem about integration and discussing things like the burqas you were talking about and face coverings, where there is effectively separation within this country. I wouldn't go as far to say sectarianism, which I was about to. But
I was like, I know the word you're going to say.
and where different cultures have different, I think, ways of doing things. But we've been, we are a tolerant nation, but we have been far too tolerant.
Too tolerant, yes.
And I think not able to express ourselves when we do think that there are things going wrong, like the rape gang crisis, and to be able to talk about it openly. And those that then do talk about it openly or say, hello, there's a problem here, good old Maggie Oliver, you get shouted down again for being racist or being part of the far right.
Well, it's not just shouted down. Some people get thrown in prison for it. Well, we could have the debate about whether there should be or shouldn't be a law, but I mean, the thing I find more terrifying is the growth of self-censorship. The idea that people are watching the language that they're using because they are now scared of the consequences of it. And it's not done for protection, it's done to control, in my opinion. I'm not one of these great believers of, these kind of WEF stuff and all the rest of it. It's like, we've been around government a long time. It's sheer incompetence as to why everything goes wrong. It's not grand conspiracy. But I am concerned, really, with the government's approach to this and the impending Islamophobia bill. I have to admit, this one is very chilling to me.
Yeah, so the trying to work out a definition of Islamophobia, I think, again, there has to be a question around why the priority is there, and why the focus isn't about sort of hate crime in general against a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds and cultures that face hate crime, and including anti-Semitism that's taking place across the country. So the obsession with some groups and quarters and departments within Whitehall departments that are obsessed by this particular issue, or have been tasked to find a definition, and then find that gets up the food chain within government a lot quicker than the real bread and butter issues like fixing the economy.
Yes, do you remember that little old thing that they've got to do to fix the economy?
And, stopping the small boat crisis. Not insignificant things that matter to all of us in this country, because all of us who are here legally and playing by the rules, which is the overwhelming vast majority, people work hard, they pay taxes, their taxes are going on to hotel accommodation. That is wrong. It is going on support for people that have come to the country illegally. That is wrong. So, focusing on what is or is not Islamophobia, which I think will be impossible to find a definition for anyway, and I don't think there should be one, because hurty words, in the words of the Chancellor...
I can't believe that is what the Chancellor of the Exchequer... That is the level of discourse now, hurty words. I mean, fair enough, I think I've used that phrase here a couple of times, but I'm not the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and, and the seriousness of this government is a big problem I have. But then I think the seriousness of our politics is descending very quickly, because there's a great story now about reform. Now, I don't know if you know, I'm a big reform critic. They don't like me very much because they keep pointing out that they're hypocrisy, and they really don't like it when you do that. But I think it's at Kent County Council, I don't know if you see the story, that they pulled books from the library in the kids section because they are trans ideology. They're pushing the agenda. I mean, you talk about these kind of the issues, the bread and butter issues. Do not get me wrong. I have an unease with a lot of this kind of the trans stuff and the kids. However, Kent has a massive special educational needs budget deficit. What do you think the council should really be spending their time on? Helping kids with special needs, or getting rather annoyed about flags in a book? I mean, there's rather simplicity of an argument, but it does seem to me that in the voter mind, I think they would rather be concerned about budget deficits and actually making sure services are there for people who need them, and maybe we deal with that stuff a little bit later on.
Yeah, I do think that's right. I think, look, people, because it's about serving everybody within Kent, and if there is, as you say, a deficit within the spending, and tackling the issues of special education needs and children in education that need that sort of help and support, then of course that should be a priority and focus. The problem that we've got to, I think, is because of all the issues that we just talked about, where there has been an ability and an exacerbation of left-wing ideology and wokeness to prevent people talking about things like children in schools and gender ideology and everything that we're going to come on to. That has allowed, because if you dare talk about it, then you're seen to be, homophobic.
Yes.
Or how dare you sort of talk down, live and let live, or how dare you're stopping someone's rights and their equality. So you get shouted down a lot by the left if you don't have been seen or haven't been seen to support it. What we don't want to do, I think, is risk then going too far to the right to counter that.
Yes.
It's just about being sensible, pragmatic and reasonable. It's an interesting story, because today, if you're in London, it is London Pride.
It's London Pride.
There'll be lots of different people. Now, I'm afraid to say that Pride, I do think, has been politicised.
I completely agree.
And far too far. Because the organisers, I understand today, have banned all political parties from attending, which I think, if you are a movement, if you are a cause that still wants to engage with government or engage in the public domain, in public opinion and conversation by talking about equality, or if there are issues that still need to be fixed, then everything still needs to be fixed.
Yes.
Everything can still make progress, or can be better for everybody. But I think the idea of banning political parties from our march, having a flag that, if you ask anybody on the streets today, will never be able to tell you what it now means.
I mean, I don't
what it
even
resembles.
know. I always think the LGBTQ plus is just the premium version. I think it's rather ridiculous, actually. But the one thing I find interesting about this is they want to say they're a political movement, but you banned political people.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
And that's why I think, again, it might be trivial, but, the idea of taking or not flying the flag at councils, I can sort of understand.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, if nobody can understand what it is, then it's pointless anyway. Because a flag, ultimately, and I don't want to get too excited about flags. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah.
But they're about identity and belonging. So we all know our UK national flag, what that means, what that stands for, the constituent parts that make up the United Kingdom, this great, great country. You know what your local scout flag might be, or the local regiment in the armed forces. You know what many other kinds of your local county council, your county flag. You can identify with that because that's your place of belonging. It's your council. It's where your money goes, and it's where you get your services from, and it's where you should be able to thrive and enjoy your life. The pride flag, I don't understand why it's ever had to change from the original rainbow, which was, and I think it is important still, to talk about pride and to have days like today, because there are still people in this country who, I know it's very easy to forget, particular people of a certain age, who would have been prosecuted, would have been thrown in jail just for being gay or lesbian.
Yeah,
and
it wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago. So these people have had an injustice in their lives. So I think to celebrate the fact that we've righted that wrong, corrected that wrong, I think is a right thing to do. Does it need to be a whole month worth of events? I don't know.
No.
Does it need to have a particular flag which now incorporates all the alphabeti spaghetti? I don't think so. Does it mean that we should not talk about the issue? No, because there are people who, for whatever reason, and it is their lives and their issues, and that's not to dismiss it, but if you feel you've been born into the wrong body, I just want to make sure that you have the most thriving, successful life possible.
Yeah.
Do I think that gives you an overriding right to enter a women's changing room if you're not a woman? No, I don't think that's right. Do I think it gives you a right to compete in women's sports when you are biologically male? No, I don't. Do I think that as part of this debate, I think it's been a terrible debate because all we end up talking about is prisons and toilets, and forgetting the large majority of the population who are just women.
Yes.
Who feel that they're right.
Do you remember them?
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that took over 10 years for the Supreme Court to realise what one was.
Exactly. Women who had to also, like people who are gay and lesbian, will have their day to celebrate today, pride, and be proud of who they are. Women had to fight for injustices and the votes and equality, and are still fighting for equality in terms of pay. So, there are lots of injustices that take place, and which I think we should focus on. One of the injustices, just very briefly, is, I think, children in this particular debate, where, again, because of the politicisation of it and the wokeness and the offence you might cause if you dare speak out about a child that could be questioning themselves, going through that hormonal stage in their life, they're questioning themselves. They might have been over-influenced on social media, as it is today. Kids have got access to far much than what we would have had, and so they will question themselves. The idea that we've had things like the Tavistock Centre, funded by taxpayer money on the NHS, which has failed routinely and repeatedly by prescribing kids puberty blockers and forcing them down a particular path where now many kids regret going down that path because they didn't have the information, they didn't have the therapy, they didn't have the right contact with the NHS at the right time, has led to disaster. So I think removing those books from libraries at schools that might reduce confusion or reduce any kind of access at a very young age, I think is the right thing to do. But I wouldn't be shouting about it from the rooftop, saying what a win this is and how great we are and look at us, how great. It is just a simple, I think, sensible thing to do. And just as you said earlier on, you don't need to talk about how tough you are to do things. You do it by demonstration and your actions, and that could just be something that people can point to say, we've taken action, and now we're moving on to many other big things.
I couldn't agree more with you on that. The reason that everybody has to keep doing a song and dance about everything, and they say, look at me, look at what brilliant things we've done. Just do it. Move on, because you look more serious. You look like you're actually tackling the issues, and you've got a very clear path. The one thing I was talking with Peter Bleksley earlier, there is no vision in this country. We don't think longer than the end of our noses, and unfortunately we kick the can down the road. There's no more road left, and the can is about this big. It's rather ridiculous, but I think it's so right that we've got to be serious. We're not a serious country anymore. We're not led by serious people, if I'm being honest. Our debates just descend into slinging matches, and it's boring. Don't get me wrong, throwing a bit of mud around every now and then is a bit of fun. But yeah, Charlie, do stick around, and we're just going to have a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Talk Breakfast. I'm Peter Barnes, filling in for Alex Phillips. I'm joined by the wonderful Charlie Rowley, and Sharon from Staffordshire says, well said, Charlie Rowley, you are always a voice of truth.
Oh, well.
I mean, being a voice of truth is a very powerful thing to be. I mean, yeah, you can be wonderful and brilliant, but a voice of truth, I like that. I really do.
Well, she's right.
Well, yeah, of course she is. Of course she is. That's why you sat here. But I'm talking about the voice of truth. The man who truth and him have never really been in the same room is Boris Johnson. Many people in the Conservative Party seem to think he is the saviour, and I can't help but think those people need some help, because I think he has been the disaster for the Conservative Party, and they're trying to plot his return. Do you think Boris Johnson can save the Conservative Party? There's a question for you.
That is a question.
It's a little early, but yeah.
Well, I'm not sure.
Tiptoe around it a little bit more.
Well, I just, because ultimately, and this may sound the biggest cop-out ever, but you'll never know until you see it in action. And I can understand why people will look to Boris Johnson, because, when you are a party that's been in government for a long time, it is the most successful party in the Western world, politically speaking. When you've had your only last Conservative Prime Minister that had an election and won an 80-seat majority, who has been in the Tory party for a long time, has been stealing headlines, that has been the good time MP, the good time politician of the Tory party. When you're feeling low, and lots of Tories are feeling low out there, can it get any lower?
Yes.
It's very easy. It's very easy to then look for what you had in the past. It's a bit like an ex. A relationship you had with an ex.
Yeah.
And you go through that period of, have we squandered something good? Well, we did squander something good. Who was to blame for a lot of that? And much of that? Boris has to take his share of that responsibility. So is it right to then go back to what is an ex, or do you have to then just try and move forward with your life and move forward as the
I think we're getting very deep here, Charlie. Are you okay? I feel like we've moved on to a different conversation, though. But I do think you're spot on. That when political parties get into trouble, they gravitate to the known. The Tories do it all the time. They want a Thatcher figure. And do you know what? I'm rather sick and tired of reheated Thatcherism. I'd like something new. I'd like some vision, some boldness, and I'm not getting it from Kemi. I'm really not. And I don't think Robert Jenrick is the right answer to it either.
Well, I think, just on the first part, I think you're right, because, look, there are lots of people, as there have been in the Labour Party, in the Labour government, that, have been clamouring over, we need to return to, Tony Blair and New Labour. And people forget that for as much as Tony Blair was a brilliant orator, I think you can't fault him for that. Won 3 general elections. That's huge success in political party terms, in British political history terms. But actually, he did make a fair few mistakes. I think people will now recognise, such as the integration in Europe a bit too much. The problems that we're seeing now might have stemmed from that. Wanting to give up the pound.
That is the most polite I've ever heard that put, particularly in this building.
Well, it's a Saturday morning. Wanting to give up the pound. All of those kinds of things. He made mistakes, but people in the Labour Party can clamber over Tony Blair and think, we need him to save us again, or we don't, and the Labour Party won't succeed. And so maybe it's a similar.
Yeah, I could say when it comes to the Labour Party, though, we keep seeing the rise of Jeremy Corbyn again.
Well,
but you keep clinging to the love to the known. I mean, the man has got a -26 popularity rating, and yet some people seem to think he's the magic grandpa again.
Yeah, and I don't buy the argument that if the Tory party changed its leader, that nobody would be able to impact the polls. I do think Kemi is in a tough position. It is the biggest defeat the Tory party have got. She's not even been in for a year. So the question, it's an awful question, I suppose, but who's had it? Well, the Prime Minister's obviously had a worse year compared to Kemi, but if you're a Tory, you would. I think that's what exacerbates people, because you think this Labour government have been so bad. How can we still be, or Tories still be doing as bad as we are? We should be doing better. But I do think we've seen. She's taken that criticism. I think we've seen a bit more of late.
Yeah, I said this the other day. Old Kemi kind of popped her head back up. That kind of I'm not taking this from anybody.
Yeah.
I was like, she's back.
Yeah.
And then she disappeared again.
Yeah.
There's not enough consistency, and I thought she made a blunder. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually not that much. I actually do quite like Kemi, but I will say, when it was the spending review Prime Minister's questions, and she went, well, I'm getting better every week. Don't acknowledge that you weren't great the week before. You know, a basic thing of Prime Minister's questions, as you know, is it's a show.
Yeah.
It's a show of strength and support. And I mean, when she said it, I was like, oh.
Yes.
Like, you felt there's that side of the room go, oh no, don't say that.
Yes, and you wonder, because you're right, you know, I don't know how many people, you know, fixated by PMQs, but it could have just been a message to the wider,
Yes.
you know, party base that, you know, things are getting better.
That's
I'm going to
true.
get better, acknowledge it, but I'm still committed to the causes, like, you know, holding the government's feet to the fire when it comes to the rape gang scandal,
Yes.
like the spending review,
True.
like the mismanagement of the economy in general under Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. So there's lots of things there. So I think it's one that the Tory party should just hold fire and should just see how things go. There is time.
Yes, there is.
Politics is so volatile,
I know,
as Tories should fully well know.
Yes, I'm going to say, I'm talking about holding fire. Charlie, do hold fire. We're just going to throw it to break. I was very proud of that one.
They are so silly, but this is she fashions herself. You know, she calls herself the Iron Chancellor. She's anything.
Not anymore.
She's anything but. You know, she is promoted way beyond her ability. I get the impression she's there because she's a woman, because of this, because of that. It's typical left-wing stuff. It's all about identity. It isn't about ability, and this is where it gets us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to Talk Breakfast. I'm Peter Bowes, I'm joined by the wonderful Charlie Rowley, and we're just going to have a little quick flick through the voice notes that we're still getting. And if you do want to get in touch with us, by the way, the number is 0344 499 1000. You can send an old-fashioned SMS message, that's a text message, so that's to 87222. Don't forget to start with Talk. And yes, of course, you can still send us a voice note as well. But yeah, let's go to Anna, and let's see what she's got to say about Keir Starmer.
Morning, guys. Just listening to Charlie Rowley saying that Keir Starmer would be the nice guy in the corner and he's not a leader. Charlie, give your head a wobble. Keir Starmer is not a nice man. Keir Starmer is a tyrant. That's why he's not a leader. He's a tyrant. A good leader doesn't need to be tyrannical. Look at what he's done. Peter Lynch, a grandad with no previous convictions, died in prison. Lucy Connolly, the pensioners, the farmers. Do not go on radio and say Keir Starmer is a nice man, Charlie. That is a cop-out, mate.
Oh, there's some strong words there, I'm not going to lie, but my thing with Starmer is he's a product. He's not the illness. He's a symptom. You know, we've got in our politics this kind of a culture of what I call the human rights regime. You know, this kind of lawyer. They're not really in the real world. They don't really get the issues. They don't understand why people are so angry about what's happening. And I always think that I do kind of see it from your point of view that, you know, I don't think he's a tyrant because I don't think he sees anything that he's done wrong. I just think his worldview is so different to everybody else's that he's really struggling to connect.
Yes.
And I think that is, for a politician, it's terrible. For a prime minister, it's fatal.
Yes, I mean, maybe I have overlooked some of the things that were just said there, but I think I put it down to incompetence on behalf of the Prime Minister, rather than thinking that he is just an evil being. I don't think he genuinely is. I do think he's probably incompetent. He clings on to, as you were just saying, Peter, those safety nets. So when it comes to Lucy Connolly, for example, just an example there, I mean, he wasn't her prosecuting or defence barrister there. He wasn't the judge who, after review, has said that that should be maintained. Now, if word gets out, or if there's any kind of news or suggestion that he has interfered in the judicial system by keeping Lucy Connolly, who has been wrongly locked up for far too long, I absolutely agree with you on that. Then, of course, there'll be more riots on the streets, I should imagine. So I just think he is incompetent and in this vacuum of left-wing ideology, and has the constraints of just being a lawyer, not a leader. That's it.
I couldn't agree more. So many people keep making this point that, you know, he's a human rights lawyer. He sees the world in these structures, in these framework, and the minute that is suddenly out of kilter, he doesn't know what to do. He's like an actor who doesn't know his lines, and he's asking for a prompt, and there's nobody there.
You're absolutely right, and this goes to the heart of politics and the problem in our country is that you will get ministers and people in politics who have arrived at a particular status and have a title as minister for this, that, or the other, including Prime Minister. You'll be surrounded by officials and advisors who obviously do the hard yards of putting the briefing together,
the actual governing bit,
trying to reduce those decisions down to put before you, and then you make a sort of a final decision. However, that if you don't have an overriding vision, if you haven't got that political antennae or that instinct, then you are just going to be guided by a civil service that also is incompetent and has far too many people and has taken on this woke ideology nonsense to an extent where ministers are blinded by not dealing with housing or homelessness. They're obsessed by a definition of Islamophobia or workers' rights or whatever it is. Workers' rights that actually aren't going to help workers, by the way. It's going to cost
I've got to say, there's two bills coming around the corner. There is the workers' rights and the renters' rights bill.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could not get two dumber bits of legislation right now, and yet they're going hell for leather, because I said this to Ryan Serby from The Sun. The political operation out of number 10 is catastrophic.
Yes, it is. And all I know is that I think their plan for change is something that they're going to want to push on. Apparently that is what they see as the get Brexit done equivalent.
Lord.
But I think the only plan for change that people have in this country is to change this government.
Yeah, that's half the problem. And yes, Charlie, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great having you. It was wonderful insights. Unfortunately, she wasn't overly impressed, but I still think you're the voice of truth.
That's okay.
Thank you so much, and we will be right back in just a second after these messages. Thank you very much. Catch you in a bit.
We've just been talking in the office here about how many of us have been attacked at some point or other by some form of flying beast or any wildlife. I mean, so we'll take your stories this morning.
Hello, this story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah, rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. this rhino started chasing us. there's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Talk. Don't worry, there's just one more hour left of me. We have made it through the last 3, just about. I think my patience is getting there. But thank you so much for all these amazing comments. Everyone's been so kind. But there's some great points really being made about Boris Johnson. You know, a lot of people saying he was a disaster. You know, his fanatical green wife, but he's a love of the green agenda. I do agree. I think was one of the reasons a lot of people don't trust him anymore. And I want to go back to what something Peter Stone has just said here, that actually that Kemi at the last PMQs was very animated, very passionate. And I told you now, when she has her moments of what I call old Kemi, she was a very powerful debater. She was very powerful at the dispatch box. But then the minute she got the title of Leader of the Opposition, where did she go? What happened to her? I know people get, you know, that sometimes the office can often intimidate, but I mean, there's the learning curve and there's the long way round. And unfortunately, I think the Tories are running out of time. But joining me from The Sun on Sunday to talk about all of this kind of stuff is Sophia Slayer, the political correspondent. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to say, so let's start off with what I can think is only one of the most embarrassing things I've seen in British politics, and it's Rachel Reeves. I mean, I think politically she's done. I think her time as Chancellor is being held together by the markets of the city and those traders because they're scared of what's coming around the corner. But I tell you what, the thing this country should be scared of, tax rises.
100%, yes. She's done an interview that's in one of the big papers today, where she has, you know, she's totally unable to rule out tax rises. We should be worried. She's also, apparently earlier in the week, she also briefed Cabinet more explicit than that tax rises are likely. It's looking like a grim picture. She's had multiple U-turns forced on her, which is costing billions. It looks like the black hole might be up to sort of 30 billion that she's going to have to find. This is big money after sort of, you know, they started their premiership sort of talking about trying to fix the foundations and fill a 22 billion Tory black hole. So I think we can see where you know, they're pitch rolling already after these major U-turns. So I think it's going to be quite quite bleak. And, you know, we're all going to be asking those kind of questions. Are they going to break their manifesto promises to sort of not increase sort of like VAT, income tax, things like this? Are these really crucial taxes up for grabs now?
Yeah, they did rather box themselves in so early on by taking these great, you know, these great levers that they've got to be able to pull, and they just cut themselves off. I don't think they really grasped the economic chaos that this country is actually in. I don't think they really, until they were actually in the room, which is a little too late to realise it, you know, that they just how much work was actually needed. And that just saying the word growth doesn't mean growth is going to happen. I like the idea of it for them, but I don't think they know what it means. The job of government to actually make sure that it happens.
Yeah, and there is a lot of frustration actually, certainly on the more sort of right of their party, with these U-turns. You know, an MP said to me the other week, we cannot keep doing this. It is so expensive. Another one I was speaking to yesterday said it really undermines our credibility. You know, we need to be a bit more like Blair, they were saying to me, sort of really credible and really strong in the economy, you know, aware of social issues. And it's funny, something an MP said to me a long time ago when they were in opposition was, people think that Labour think too much with their heart and not enough with their head. And I think that's what we're seeing now is, you know, if you can't shave off a few billion when you've got big rebels on your back benches, you've got a lot of problems coming down the line.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Considering the size of the welfare budget, whether it's able to spend what that's going to end up being, I mean, $5 billion was a drop in the ocean compared to what was actually needed, and it just showed a party that is not capable of doing it. And I think that's the real thing. Don't get me wrong, it's not in their bones, it's not in their DNA to do this stuff, but the credibility line is really important there, because it shows that it's a government that is willing to take the tough decisions and actually lead and actually make the argument. They didn't do it. And now, because of that, the left of the party has seen that opening and they have pounced, and I mean pounced.
Yeah.
You know, Angela Rayner on manoeuvres, but, you know, she might as well join NATO. You know, she's got that many people moving around with her. It's actually incredible. But speaking of people who just won't go away on the left, Jeremy Corbyn, Magic Grandpa himself. You know, I always find it quite funny looking back at it. Oh, Jeremy Corbyn at Glastonbury doesn't seem that bad now, really, does it, considering everything? But he's back with a bang with Zara Sultana making a dart for it.
He is back with a bang, and I think all journalists from most media outlets were sort of a little bit sort of excited, if not nostalgic, because if anything, the hard left produces news. There's nothing boring about these guys.
That's true.
But yeah, so Zara Sultana, she's a sort of very left-wing MP, very pro-Gaza MP. She had the whip withdrawn from Labour, so she's no longer a Labour MP. Still a Labour Party member, but she announced the other night that she was quitting the party, forming her own thing with Jeremy. Jeremy Corbyn was said to be a bit annoyed about this.
Just a tad.
And it sounds like...
that rather famous Corbyn temper.
Quite, yeah. I mean, it sounds... For a few people I was speaking to yesterday, it sounds like sort of she was kind of bouncing him into it, trying to get him to sort of act, really. And I think this could go two ways. I spoke to quite a few people about this sort of Corbyn, Zara party, a sort of left, Gaza-y type party. And there's two different opinions on it in the Labour Party. Quite a few people were saying to me, this is a great thing, because they're going to split up the left. It's a crowded market. You know, the Greens have got quite a big following now, and quite a few MPs, and they're going to sort of split that vote, and there's going to be a bit of a drama between all of those. So there's quite a few MPs that were quite chuffed about this. On the other hand, I spoke to others that were quite worried about this, because if they manage to get their act together, which remains to be seen.
It's 2025, anything can happen.
Anything is possible. If they manage to get their act together, and we saw at the general election last year, there was this really big sort of Gaza element in some constituencies, not across the country, but in some constituencies it was a really big issue. You saw, Health Secretary Wes Streeting, his majority was slashed. You saw that.
John Ashdown.
John Ashworth, he lost his seat to sort of a pro-Gaza MP.
I have to admit, wasn't that sad when that happened? I've never been a fan of his, if I'm being honest, but my big fear is, like you said, if they could get their act together, they get a decent donor who's got some money and they actually have some structure to it. I think there's got legs to cause trouble, because the one thing a lot of people don't realise, when you look at voter migration, the people leaving Labour aren't going to reform in the numbers people think they are. They're going to other progressive parties, and if they offer something else, this kind of new kind of Gaza party, the vote the Labour Party need isn't coming home anytime soon.
And what would be interesting is you might remember sort of last time round, Jeremy Corbyn had this movement called Momentum.
Yes.
And it was a really young movement, and actually they weren't big, rich donors. It was lots of people giving little.
Yes.
And I wonder if he could sort of mobilise that sort of thing again.
I completely forgot about that. I think it was more out of kind of like mental safety more than anything else. Because but you're right there, because they had a great mobilisation, they had a great ground game. They knew how to play the social media game. You know, if they can mobilise that again, and I think they're more than capable of it. I think, you know, young people are looking for vision. They're looking for radical change. And I mean, as you say, the left, never short of a story, but it's radical and it's different, and people like different. Whether it's good or bad, but but I have to admit. But then, you know, we look at one of the major issues that no political party, in my opinion, has got a tackle on is immigration. You know, we're looking at these French police officers who conveniently found a Stanley knife after £80 million that we've given them. But I love that. But then also another convenience is the BBC just happened to be there with a camera. You know, and then finally somebody decided to wade into the water and put the knife in the boat. I don't like calling them boats. I think it's like dinghy or whatever is a better phrase for it. But, you know, I was talking with Ryan Saby from the Sun, and he was saying that, you know, we're starting to see Europe and over here as well, they kind of reacting to this issue more now so than ever. I wonder, why do you think this really is?
Because I think politicians are worried that they're going to lose because it's such a visual demonstration of failure, isn't it? It's so visual.
Incompetence laid bare.
Exactly. You know, people do get into the country in other routes, but it's not on camera. It's not as visual like this. We don't see, you know, hundreds of men coming off of a boat or a plane in the same way that we do this. And I think, you know, although the issues like the NHS and the economy are obviously always high on the agenda, I think this is something, we're all speaking about this in a different way now. You know, just in the last year, I think the British public has had enough, and sort of, you know, things that we sort of would say, oh, that you can't say that, you know, it's an awful thing to say, is just sort of quite commonplace.
And the one I use as a great example is the ban the burqa argument. Just a few years ago, that went insane. Now, people went, actually, they've got a point here, and I do think it's back because of the immigration issue. You know, we're starting to see a government that has no impact. It is reacting, not impacting. And I think this small boats crisis is, like you said, the visual element. But, I mean, did you see the Public Accounts Committee where they said, you know, nobody's counted who's leaving on a visa? I mean, I cannot believe we have an Office of National Statistics that can't count. Can you think of a more British story right now?
I know.
It's incredible to me.
And that's the problem is, you know, that adds to it. It's kind of what people are feeling on their streets in terms of issues with integration and things like that doesn't necessarily relate to what our politicians are telling us. You know, they might throw some numbers at us, but that doesn't mean, you know, where I live in East London, you know, there are problems with integration. I'm not going to pretend it's all merry and wonderful multiculturalism. You know, there were stickers round by my flat calling for a caliphate. I'm not really that comfortable with that, you know, that sort of thing. So I think we need to have a grown-up conversation, and I think we're getting there. I think the interesting thing about this image is, you know, it's, like we said, it's a very visual demonstration, but the public will feel pleased to see this, I think, but also a bit frustrated. You know, this has been going on since 2018. Why are you only doing this now?
Yeah, exactly. And after so much money. So much money. The whole smash the gangs thing. My thing with that is, it seems to me that the Labour Party keep thinking that the gangs started the migration crisis. The way they talk about it, say, we get rid of the gangs, the crisis goes away. No, it doesn't. I mean, basic supply and demand, which obviously they clearly don't understand if you look at the economy, you know, says that just because you take out one gang, another one will take its place. They're not really stopping this crisis at the start of it or dealing with the kind of outcomes of it. We look at the migrant hotel fiasco. I mean, we don't know who is coming into this country. We just don't. And that is just a laughing stock internationally.
So this coming week, Emmanuel Macron of France is coming for a state visit, and I think we will see an announcement around this, some sort of deal with France. The things that have sort of leaked out and been briefed are sort of one in, one out idea, sort of, you know, we send all the boat migrants back to France, but in exchange for sort of asylum seekers in France who might have family links. I think that's going to be quite controversial. I think one of the Tory MPs described it as a bit of a merry-go-round kind of policy.
I think that was the polite way of putting it.
And I struggle to see, we always go back to that where's the deterrent?
Yes.
You know, there's a market there, and when there's a will, there's a way, and they will find other ways to do this. So I feel like there's still that question mark over whether or not there's going to be a deterrent in place.
Yeah, I don't think they understand what that word means. I mean, the scrapping of the Rwanda plan, no matter what you think of it, I think you look at that date and the numbers show it was having an effect, even though we actually hadn't had a single flight take off.
Yeah.
You know, the numbers clearly show that scrapping it was a mistake, and the pettiness, in my opinion, of Starmer getting rid of it because it's a gimmick. Well, do you know what? It was more than you've got, because we're throwing money at this as the Gold Command. I mean, I love the fact he was fourth choice. And then he got up in the first press conference and went, "This is never going to work." I was like, that is hilarious, but also terrifying. But we're looking at all of this kind of stuff. It's just a culmination of incompetence. People always look for conspiracies and all the rest of it. It's like, nope, it's just good old-fashioned British incompetence.
Totally. I mean, it remains to be seen if we can sort of strike a deal with France that works. I think the public need to see physical things like this. But again, like I say, it's what they feel on their streets. It's what they feel when they go for a job. It's what they feel when they go for a hospital appointment and these sort of things. So as much as we can, you know, the politicians can spin things up and put things out there and strike deals. You know, we've got lots of deals with different countries. Well, hey, but
each one worse than the original situation.
It doesn't translate into a reality for Brits on the street day in, day out. They're still frustrated with it. I mean, one of the things that I think is interesting that the government is waking up to is that kind of black market economy, that draw. And I think that's a new. I mean, the conversation's already been there, but the conversation's really big at the moment because France has said, you know, the reason people are coming to Britain is because you're booming black market economy. They can work illegally, and that is a problem. And I think you know, the Home Office does realise that. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper realises that, and they've been doing quite a few raids. But let's see, because I think the problem is that you raid these places, you take out these illegal workers, and then they sort of end up back working in the same place again. Exactly. And it's that kind of.
I remember they went after, like, it was nail salons and places like that, wasn't it? But I love how they didn't go after rather the larger companies. You know, like Deliveroo, for example, have been implicated in this quite a lot. And, you know, you're so right, because when other nations are pointing out, they're coming to you because of the decisions you're making. You're giving them the red carpet treatment. Of course they're going to keep coming. And also, I don't blame them for coming. You know, I always think a lot of this stuff has started with terrible trade policies that have kept nations in place. You know, while we've been getting nice, cheap deals and everything, these countries have been kept in stasis and not developed. So, of course, someone's going to want to come to Europe. I don't understand why anybody is so surprised by it. But again, we're looking at the Labour Party to take responsibility, and that's another word that does not exist in this country anymore.
Well, there is a Labour case to make, actually. There is even a left-wing argument you can make about this. I know, careful.
Do you know what building
this is what they should be. This is what they should be doing. Is that, you know, have you ever ordered like a Deliveroo or Just Eat or whatever, and the picture of the person on your phone is different to the one that comes to you? You know, some of these people are being, it's slave labour, some of this. They're being kept in appalling conditions, and that goes for nail bars and all these different salons and things like that. And there is a case to make that, you know, it has an impact on the welfare state. Labour founded the welfare state. They need to make that, you know, defence of the welfare state and things like that. So I think there is a case to make from a Labour perspective. They're not really doing that.
No, I also think they're too scared to do that because they're too scared of splitting the base that they've got, because they've got the rather progressive kind of, you know, everybody's welcome refugees, woohoo, and then you've got the old kind of staunch Labour vote that doesn't like what they're seeing. They don't recognise the Labour Party. That's why the word betrayal. I see it from the left and the right more and more every day, that, you know, they feel like they're being let down, but they also that they're not being listened to. And I think that is why obviously you get parties like Reform can swoop in, and this whole us versus them narrative has never felt stronger.
Oh, totally. And you can see that. You can see those kind of voters who were Labour for life, you know, family Labour voters, their families never voted any other way. They made a decision in 2019 to vote for Boris because they were fed up and they wanted change. It didn't work out, and they thought, right, we're going to give Labour a go because they are banging the drum for what we want. They are now not getting with Labour what they've been promised and what they hoped for. And I think a lot of those voters are now looking at reform.
Yes, it is. The rise of reform is down to the mainstream failure, and they don't recognise that. They want to box it off and say, "Oh, it's just the racists, racists." It's not. It is their failure, and it is staring them in the face. And it's Nigel Farage marching to number 10, and they're all freaking out because they don't know what to do, and it's embarrassing to keep watching them fall over themselves more than anything.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that you've got some MPs that keep sort of pushing, well, we need to go more left.
Yeah. Oh,
that's their reaction.
Let's spend more money because that solves everything. Anyway, Sophia, thank you so much for joining us. And do join us after this break.
I've seen Brexit, I've seen Jeremy Corbyn, I've seen Boris, I've seen Partygate. But what I've seen this week is quite incredible.
What's it been like close up? What is it? Chaos?
It's total chaos. And I'll tell you what, one of the big things was on during that vote on Tuesday, where the government, this big welfare reform, the benefits crackdown. And what did they do? They held a vote on precisely nothing, because all the big reforms were stripped out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Talk. I'm Peter Barnes, covering for Alex Phillips here on Breakfast. Now, one of the big stories we've been talking about is the migration crisis. I feel like that's all we talk about, but it is one of the most important issues because it shows very clearly this government's incapable of effecting change. It shows that this government has no plan, and it shows that, yet again, it feels so confident to get up in front of us and gaslight us and make us believe that they have any idea what they're doing. Now, well, there is one person who I know has been calling them out for a very long time, and she has been leading on this. That is the brilliant Lucy White over at the Centre for Migration Control, and they do some excellent work. Welcome to the show, Lucy.
Hi, Peter. Good morning. It's great to be here.
Thanks.
How are you?
Yes, not so bad, thank you. Getting through it. We're nearly at the end, thank God. But yes, anyway, this migration crisis, the small boats, it is a visual representation of the disaster of every government and every political party to deal with this. It shows that we are not a serious nation, in my opinion, because we cannot control our borders. We have everybody wandering in, wandering out, and nobody knows who they are.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, we've, from the year ending March 2025, we've had 44,125 100,000 illegal migrants. That's 120 on average every single day. And we have no idea who these people are. The issue is they aren't just arriving into our country to be detained and deported. They are literally being dispersed across our country into hotels, into neighborhoods and into communities, which is quite frankly terrifying.
Yes, I know. And you see these stories again and again of like them hanging out in places where it is not appropriate. And yet again, the police are saying they're quietly moving them on. They're trying to continually diminish this. And I think that is infuriating the public even more, because the government is trying to tell people that what they're seeing with their own eyes isn't happening. And I tell you what, I find it, one, insulting, and two, I think it's pretty dangerous, because we've already seen the level of anger over this issue. And I think the government are playing with fire if they're not careful, that there's got to release something, because the anger and the rage on this issue is, you can feel it everywhere you go.
Yeah, of course you can feel it, because these are people that are not supposed to be there. And I think the rage mainly comes from the fact that British taxpayers, you can pay 20, 30, 40, 45% of your entire income on taxes, and it's going to illegal migrants. The bill is £6.4 billion every single year. And we're fed up. You have people that are struggling, people that can't go on holiday. I'm a young person that works in London. My friends, I'm from Essex, and originally they live in Essex and they commute into work, which takes them about an hour and 20 minutes every single day, then an hour and 20 minutes back home after a long day working in an office. Then you get the illegal migrants who are just housed for free in Zone 1, which is just a slap in the face, quite frankly. And now we have stories of, Keir Starmer saying we will move them out of hotels but into private accommodation, which again is just absurd.
I thought that was a slap in the face to every young person who wanted to get on the property ladder or wanted to move to a big city. I thought that was, I couldn't believe they had the audacity to do that, if I'm being honest.
Exactly. Well, I would say that any landlord that accepts this deal, which could be 6 months or even 5 years of upfront payment for full rent, they are a traitor. They are a traitor to the British people. Every single hotel as well that have been approached by Serco, Mears, Clear Spring, they're quite frankly traitors. They have to say no, because the more and more we resist and we say, no, you're not taking this hotel or this land or this, this apartment, then we can start putting up a front against them. I would say 2 years ago, I used to work with an MP, a former Conservative MP, and there was a big group of illegal migrants that they wanted to put in a former university accommodation to
I
save
remember this story.
To save costs on hotels, but that university block was next to a girls' school, and you just think, why on earth would you be so asinine to put illegal migrant men next to a girls' school? And the Centre for Migration Control have done a lot of data on this, mainly through Freedom of Information requests, and they found that 1 in 4 sexual assaults are from foreign men in this country. And what that means is, yes, it is 1 in 4, but the argument, if you take a per capita stance, 1 in 4 men in the UK are not foreigners. So the proportion of the sexual assaults on women is by large proportion driven by foreign men from different cultures. And this is something that is of grave concern to me, but it should also be of grave concern to the politicians. So I ask you, Peter, why are they doing nothing about it? Why are we sat here on the 5th of July? And I'm sure by the end of the day, you and I can look at that, the live tracker that
Yeah. Oh, yes.
has, and there'll be another 100 people by the end of the day.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And do you know why I think they don't know what to do? It's because they're terrified of doing anything. They are terrified of the kind of factionalism that the government has got as its only base of support these days, where you've got the traditional Labour vote that wants to see action. You've got the progressive vote that thinks, just open the borders. You've got, Yvette Cooper calling everybody far right, who dares to think that maybe you don't put asylum seekers next to an all-girls school, where you don't know who these people are. And maybe, just maybe, you stop lying to people, because that's what they're doing. I have never seen a government more confident confident of lying to people. I cannot believe we see it day after day after day. And I feel sorry for some ministers that the Number 10 puts up on the media rounds because they know what's happening. They see it. They get it in their constituency email boxes every day. And they are being trotted out to excuse the inaction and the dangerous actions of this government. And I say the previous one as well. I mean, both political parties have been nowhere on this for a long time, and everybody keeps looking to reform as this kind of saviour. You know, they're the ones that are going to do it. Do you think they've got the capability of doing it?
That is a very good question. So I am now a Reform member myself, and I think Reform definitely are the party that would lead on illegal migration. I just think it's a concern how in the interview led by Stephen Edgington of GB News, who is a friend of mine, it was exposed that Nigel Farage said it was impossible to deport everyone. I think they all need to be deported, of course. We need to detain and deport the moment they arrive in our country, but also all the ones that are here illegally, they just need to go. And we've seen videos yesterday on, you know, ironically, on the 4th of July, that the French police were slashing dinghies with knives.
I mean, we've been talking about that incident quite a lot this morning because it just shows that, you know, for 80 million quid, one Stanley knife doesn't seem that bad. And also, it just shows that you can do this. And for a long time, they've not done it. You can stop the boat from going. You can put the knife in this inflatable dinghy and it will stop it from going. And it shows the public very clearly. They're running around thinking this is a PR win. I think it's a disaster for them because it shows that they have chosen not to do something. And I don't understand the mentality behind that. I really, really don't.
Exactly. So just a couple of things there. One is that we have seen that in 2023 and 2024, there were attempts similar to this of the French police using knives to deflate dinghies. So when the BBC come out and say, this is a new tactic and this is the first time it's been done, this is actually a lie. It has been done before. And again, as I say, it's all too convenient that they released this video on the 4th of July, 1 year into Keir Starmer's leadership.
There's a lot of convenience about this story. I mean, the fact that they were there in the first place with a camera, I found that rather convenient.
Yeah, well, I think we should do is, if you look back to Rishi Sunak 2 years ago in 2023, Rishi Sunak agreed with President Macron to give £480 million to support the French border control to stop the illegal migrants. However, if this were me, and this is a policy that I would suggest to the government, you should never give an upfront lump sum of money to someone without knowing if it's going to be a success. People work by incentives, and the economy is also driven by incentives. So instead, we should be saying to the French, for every single rubber dinghy that you deflate that does not reach our borders, we will pay you X amount of pounds as a bonus, because then the French will be driven by this reward incentive.
It's like a commission.
Exactly. Or we should be setting, you know, KPIs. So how many illegal migrants can you stop from reaching us, and we will pay you based on that, quite frankly. And there are drones, there are technologies, there are cameras. It's very easy to understand where these migrants are arriving from, what part of the French coast. And as you say, Peter, very correctly, we've seen with our own eyes that the French police can take a knife and stop the dinghies. But then again, putting yourself in the position of the French, in their shoes, they also don't want them illegal migrants in their country. So why would they be incentivized to stop them coming to us? I think what the British need to do is we need to stop giving all these freebies to the migrants. We need to stop giving them.
I mean, even foreign nations have said this. Say they're coming to you because you're giving them things. You know, if you are being given everything, you know, accommodation, doctors, dentists, the access to the welfare state, of course they're going to come here. It staggers me that they just don't get it. Are they stupid, or are they just complicit in it? Because I think this is the big thing now. I think they've got blood on their hands. For every person that is drowned in the Channel, that is on them. It's on them because they could have stopped this and they chose not to.
Well, I would almost agree with you, Peter, but then add a point, which is that the blood on their hands of every single person in the UK that has been raped or murdered by an illegal migrant. You know, we have many stories of people that have just been brutally attacked or raped, and every single one of those people, quite frankly, that's blood on the hands of our government.
Yes.
Be it a Conservative government, be it a Labour government, we've just had enough. And what is also startling is back in 2018, which was only 7 years ago, which in terms of timeframes is relatively recent. In 2018, there were only a total of 299 illegal migrants that crossed in 2018, only 299, whereas now it's 44,000, it's over 44,000.
Incredible.
I did the math, and it's actually 127 more.
That's amazing. Anyway, Lucy, please do keep up your brilliant work over at the Migration for Centre Control. Do join us after the break, as I'm joined by former Labour Party spokesman Jane Mathewson to talk about Jeremy Corbyn's new party and will it split the left. Stick with it. Stick with Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Talk. I'm Peter Barnes, and we are still at breakfast, and we're going through the biggest stories of the week. And I tell you now, the rise of Jeremy Corbyn and the New Left party that he's joined in with Zara Sultana, I think is... If one, I think, is being taken a little bit as a joke, I think there is some seriousness behind it. I have some big concerns about it, because the number of times we've talked about the end of the Conservatives and how it's all going to come crumbling down, I've always said the Labour Party is more split. They're just better at covering the cracks over with press releases, and they are very good at the PR game, better than Conservatives have ever been. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by James Mathewson, a former Labour Party spokesman, to talk about this. And will Jeremy Corbyn split the left?
I mean, Jeremy Corbyn already has split the left, really. I mean, Jeremy's a polarising figure, whichever way you put it. I think the guy's a great guy, having worked with him. I know that he's a good man at heart. This isn't a question of of values or morals or ideals. It's just a question of logistics and an approach and a difference in approach. And this is the problem with the left time and time again, is that many of us on the left prefer to argue with each other than we do to take that fight forward to those who disagree with us politically, and it's a dangerous business.
Well, I have to admit, to say that there is it's not a values and morals question when it comes to Jeremy Corbyn, a man implicated in probably one of the biggest black stains in British political history, which is the anti-Semitism crisis. I hate to say it, I think it's a remarkable statement to say, but the left will eat itself. It always does. The right is very good at it, but I'm astounded by Zara Sultana more than anything, because she walked away from the Labour Party with what she believes moral credibility. I'm sorry, absolutely not. That woman has supported some of the most appalling economic policies, and her stance on most of this stuff, particularly when it comes to the Gaza crisis, I find abhorrent, if I'm being brutally honest. And this idea that there is love for this party or there's love for this movement in any meaningful way, I just don't see it. I really, in all the polling data, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, she's doing something right then, Peter, isn't she, if you don't agree with her?
A lot of people say that, but I always end up being right. That's the thing that annoys a lot of people. People think I'm being...
you do, pal.
Well, I don't know. I seem to be on the winning side of a lot of these arguments because, I don't, tend to have Hamas or Hezbollah as friends, and things like that. I don't welcome them into... I don't really welcome them into the Mother of Parliaments like Jeremy Corbyn did. I tend not to, be quiet when anti-Semitism is running through my political party and then blame it on the press, and phantom incidents. I'm sorry to say that there is not a moral issue here. I'm still staggered by that comment. I cannot believe you've said that. Yeah? Anything to say? Oh,
well, did you ask me a question?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to get you to explain to me and to the people at home how you can sit and say that there is not a moral quandary here. Because Jeremy Corbyn, you keep thinking, you just said it as though it's just a normal statement. The man oversaw one of the biggest black marks in political history. The Labour Party was deemed institutionally racist on his watch, and yet you think he can lead another party. The man shouldn't be in politics, let alone in Parliament. I find it staggering.
Did I say that, Peter? Ask yourself what I said.
Well, very clear. You said it was a moral guy. He's a great guy. I've worked with him. I don't particularly think people like that are great guys. You seem to be very comfortable with that.
We have a disagreement in opinion, believe it or not. I mean,
I think it's a disagreement in fact rather than opinion.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, pal. I mean, I wouldn't come on talkTV and try and convince your viewers of left-wing opinions. This is not a left-wing channel. You're not a left-wing person. Well, there are people out there, however, who are and who want, in a pluralist society and in a democracy, to have somebody to vote for. Now, look, I don't throw my support behind a new political party because I believe in doing business inside the tent of the wider Labour movement rather than outside of it, just from a pragmatic point of view. I think there is a lot more to be achieved. Look at Zoran Mamdani, who's the fantastic new Democratic winner of the primary in New York City to be the next
God help
mayor.
New York. My lord.
Somebody who is doing business with inside the Democrats. Alexandria Ocasio.
Another party that is eating itself alive. You keep saying it as though it's all like one big kind of, it's just, everybody working together to these movements and everything. It's nonsense. I'm sorry. The Labour Party will tear each other apart more so than the Tories will do it. Because the Tories are very honest. They'll stab you in the front and they'll stab you in the back. I mean, just look at...
The Tories are very honest.
With each other in terms of how they take each other down. What the Labour Party do is they brief against each other. Look at how Keir Starmer is treating Rachel Reeves. Look at that situation. And you want to say that you guys are the moral...
Horrendous.
I think it's abhorrent. But the idea you do business in the tent. In other words, you do as we say. That's my big problem with the Labour Party.
That's not what I just said.
But it is. That's the problem.
Business within the wider Labour movement.
This Labour family argument. Which other ragtag group are we going with? Well, that's what you call it. That's what it's known as.
Peter, listen, Peter. If you want to put words in my mouth,
these are your arguments. They're not mine.
If you want to try and kind of create faux outrage and be upset,
I've never done faux outrage. I'm too tired to be outraged.
As before I came on your show here, I just had to sit and listen to some of the most heinous bile, and I've worked in Westminster, right?
We've all worked in Westminster, and usually it's coming from the leader of the opposition's office when Jeremy Corbyn was there. Let me guess, he was present but not involved.
You talk about Jeremy Corbyn, you talk about other people, fair enough, right? That's your political opinion. But I've just had to listen to some of the most extreme political views I've ever heard.
Defending our borders is an extreme political view. Maybe we should have a problem with importing people from a country that views women as second-class citizens. Might be a problem. If you've got a problem with your town being decimated by uncontrolled immigration, that is an extreme political position.
The minority of people, right?
The minority.
The talk TV viewership, if you're generous, is like 2 million a month, right? And that point is, I mean, like, even if you take that its most extreme end and give you, you know, the grace of saying, all right, that might be true, then you're like, what, 2% of the population?
Oh, your maths is as good as Jeremy Corbyn. That's absolutely ridiculous. No, I'm not going to let you finish, because I think what you've just said there is absolutely preposterous.
What you are saying is the majority viewpoint, and it simply is not.
I say you think you're in the majority. You genuinely believe you're in the majority.
You're making up information. You're not even trying to back up things with credible evidence. I'm sorry,
credible evidence. You wouldn't know it if it slapped you in the face. I cannot believe I'm having to explain to people that, you know, it is not an extreme position to be very concerned about the fact this country has no idea who's coming in and out. Oh, we're playing the language card because you can't win on the argument. You're going to play the language card. It is exhausting. I mean, nonsense. I mean, you can't win on the arguments. You can't win on the facts, so we make those up. And when you can't do that, we go for the language. It is the left-wing playbook right the way through. We see it every single time with people like you.
You asked me to come here. You booked me for this program, give some insight into what's happening on the left of British politics. You then immediately wanted to scorn that. And
I didn't immediately want to do anything. You said a preposterous statement that Jeremy Corbyn was quite a nice guy. And there's a lot of people in this country, particularly the Jewish community, that are terrified of a person like him.
Absolute nonsense, mate.
It's not nonsense. It is literal fact. Peter, you cannot sit there and say that that is nonsense. The Jewish community has been under attack, and Jeremy Corbyn has been the figure and the stench that has been around it. It is unbelievable.
Wow. Now, Peter, look, I know you're ambitious, but you're going to be at Talk TV forever if you're going to conduct yourself in this.
You can insult me, or you can insult Talk TV all you like, but I'm sorry, I am not the one defending a man like Jeremy Corbyn. I cannot believe that you can attack me all you like. It doesn't bother me. It genuinely doesn't bother me. I've been caught a lot worse by a lot better, and I'm telling you right now.
Would you like to ask me any other questions for any left-wing insight in British politics?
I don't think you have any insight in British politics. I genuinely don't. I think you live in an echo chamber that is just your own opinion bounced back left, right, and centre. It's just ridiculous. I mean, just say that he is a decent human being, that he's a great guy. I've worked with him. I will never move on from that. I just can't.
Do you know Jeremy Corbyn?
Unfortunately, I've met him a couple of times, yes, and I've repulsed at each time, if I'm being honest.
Oh my God! I bet he was thrilled to meet you as well, Peter.
Oh yeah, most people are.
Peter, no, let me be clear here, okay? Be serious for a moment. You are one of the most repulsive people I have ever spoken to in British politics. You shouldn't be anywhere near the media. You shouldn't be allowed to.
Here we go. Come on, insult me. Come on, but get it all out. Get it all out. Does it make you feel better? Here you go. You can put it all on Twitter later. You go, all your friends can click and like it. Because here we go. This is just farcical. Here we go. You've got no arguments, so you attack the person. You know you can't do that. You attack the language. This is just absurd. And it's one of the reasons why the left is never taken seriously, because you're not serious people. This country has real problems, and you're running around with Zara Sultan and Magic Grandpa believing you can fix the issues by sticking with every Islamist you can find. Well, as a gay man, I have a real problem with the way they're going about this. I cannot believe the state of British politics where we have people like you thinking I'm the problem. What a bizarre and just moronic moment in life. Absolutely astounding to me.
You are, and if you continually give platforms to the kind of people that you give platforms to,
like you, so tell me about it.
No, you get me on because you have to, you know, for some kind of perceived balance.
No, actually, do you know what's really important about getting people like you on? So the public see what you're like. So the public see the extreme.
Again, here we go.
Oh, again, you can still talk all you like, but this is the reality. People like you, we don't have to take out because you do it yourselves. We'll put you in front of the public and you just show yourselves up. You are not taken seriously because you're not serious people. You have no idea how to tackle the issues of this country. You have no idea what the people of this country actually think. You sit there with your false sense of high morality and high pomposity, and it is just exhausting. You know, everyone always thinks I'm angry. It's not. I'm just exasperated all the time.
You need to calm down, right?
Oh, I wish I could, but unfortunately, people like you are given platforms and people listen to you. And people like, we have to challenge you. We have to challenge you because you're going for too long. This is what you do. Here we go.
You're a patriot. You're just doing what's right, aren't you?
I can't stand people that use the patriotism bug. It's the last refuge of a scoundrel. But unfortunately, but at least, you know, I can sing the national anthem. I don't mind stuff like that. Your party, or your lot, can't even stand that. I mean, you want to talk talk about understanding the nation. You wouldn't know this nation because you don't live in it. You live in your own little world where you're all friends with each other as long as you agree with each other, because you step out of line and you're out. That's the reality.
It's absolute, you know, the kind of the thing that you're... The problem is, and I'm sure you were sensible at one point, but I think maybe you spent
another personal attack,
Twitter or X, but you've got this idea, this notion of what somebody who's left wing is and who they mix with.
I don't need to. I'm literally staring at you. I'm literally listening to you. I don't have to imagine it. I wish I was imagining it. I presume I'm having a fever dream, if I'm being honest. But I'm sorry, James. I can't take you seriously after that. Thanks for coming on. But let's go to break.
I've seen Brexit, I've seen Jeremy Corbyn, I've seen Boris, I've seen Partygate. But what I've seen this week is quite incredible.
What's it been like close up? What is it? Chaos?
It's total chaos. And I'll tell you what, one of the big things was on during that vote on Tuesday, where the government, this big welfare reform, the benefits crackdown. And what did they do? They held a vote on precisely nothing, because all the big reforms were stripped out.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. For those who just saw that, let me make this perfectly clear. I will debate anybody, but you don't get to sit there and insult me and insult the viewers and think you have any sense of moral superiority. You don't. You should enter a debate with honesty and decency. That didn't happen, and I don't stand for it. And that is all I have to say on that, and moving on. Anyway, right, so next up, we've got Hannah Hope from Bizarre on Sunday as editor for The Sun. Sun on Sunday, sorry. And we'll be speaking to us about Oasis's first night. And I tell you now, I am a huge Oasis fan. I love Oasis. Where I grew up, it is bread and butter. You've got to love them. Hannah, how did it go for everybody?
Oh, it was amazing, and I'm
so jealous.
I'm not just saying that because I managed to get a ticket to the hottest gig in town. Genuinely, Liam Gallagher's voice knocked everyone's socks off. I think, there was a lot of concern about the state of his vocals in recent years, after years of hard partying, boozing and smoking. But he's certainly been in good health and resting his vocals because he sounded absolutely top-notch last night.
Yeah, I have to admit, from the few reports that I've seen just while I've been saying, trying to catch up with everything, the people have been saying that the actual musicality of it was like back to the original albums. It was on point. Everything was perfect. Because I won't lie, my big fear was they wouldn't get to this date. Like, they'd had all the build-up and they just would fall out over something so stupid right at the very end.
Well, there was a lot of concern about that, and I think that's one of the reasons we haven't seen them hanging out together in the build-up. They've kept their contact to an absolute minimum. They've done a couple of weeks of rehearsals. Liam's been popping in and out because, of course, he's really just on vocals, and he's not even in all of the songs. You kind of forget there's quite a lot of songs that he actually walks off stage for, and it's Noel singing. So I think that they've kept their contact to a real minimum. So they can really focus on the music, and there's no risk of the brothers having a fallout, because we know that that's how it all came to tears last time.
Yeah, definitely. But I always say that I'd love to be at their Christmas table, just to see what would happen. Not to be involved, but just to sit there and watch. Because I have to admit, that fallout is legendary. I don't like to see family falling out. Nobody does. But, I mean, the way they go at each other and the way they've been able to bring it back together, I think is, in a way, quite inspiring.
Definitely, absolutely. And I think that, what was really nice about last night is there were so many of their kids there. You saw Liam's lookalike sons, Lennon and Jean Gallagher. Anae Gallagher, Noel's daughter, was there, as was his ex, Meg Matthews. She was in the row in front of me. So they're obviously this kind of big family, and they all support each other. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people would say, God, I'd need to go through, sibling counselling to get to a point where we could be on stage together again.
Yeah, I'd like them to get together with Will and Harry. To see whether they could bring that back together. Maybe it's just a reunion of brothers everywhere this year. But I have to admit, there was one thing that did cause a little bit of controversy, was they talked about the price of the tickets. From what I've been reading, I have to admit, it has been astronomical. I remember when it got announced, I was actually here at Talk, and I was with Alex Phillips, actually, and we were saying, just the amount of money is incredible that people were spending. And, were they right to bring that up?
I don't know. It's Liam, isn't it? He absolutely cannot.
Isn't that just a sentence? Sorry to interrupt. Isn't that just it's Liam, isn't it? And everybody just knows exactly what you mean.
He's gobby. He cannot help himself. He didn't say there wasn't a lot of chatter on stage. They thanked their fans for support, but partway through he just says, "How was it? Is it worth the £40,000 you paid for a ticket?"
Yeah.
But to be fair, there were no boos. Everyone was cheering, and I really do think probably whatever people paid for a ticket last night, they got their money's worth, because it really was like everyone was saying, God, that was probably one of the best gigs I've ever been to in my life. It was absolutely stand out. The only one thing I would say is that it was in obviously a stadium, and they had the roof on throughout the whole thing when it was a beautiful evening, and I certainly felt like it was very hot, and I've heard that they've done that to avoid drones and things kind of getting in, which I felt was a tiny bit of a shame, because obviously it was a beautiful evening. We don't have lovely weather in England that much, so I feel like we've got to celebrate it.
That's true, yeah. But can I just say, that's such a lovely British way of looking at it. It was nice, but they put the roof on. But I have to admit, though, that the price of tickets has really been at the front of quite a lot of political debate. I mean, we've had government time spent on it. Ministers have been talking about it, via Goga, all this stuff. And it is interesting because the music gigs are a big cultural moment. They're a way for people together. They are remembered in history, some of them. And do you think, that this is really a moment that we could see some shift on this issue?
I mean, I hope so. A lot of bands have actually spoken out against this dynamic pricing. I mean, I know that Chris Martin from Coldplay has said he doesn't agree with it. He thinks, music is an art form and it should be kind of given to the masses. It shouldn't just be for the rich and the middle class who can afford it. But I was speaking to friends. I mean, the other thing about the way that they now release the tickets with all the kind of phone lines and I think the buzz around it, I think people get really caught up into it. It's like kind of, joining. You want to get your hands hands on these sorts of hotcake tickets, and you end up joining, you know, all of the buzz. So maybe it's also a bit of a marketing tool.
Yeah, it's that whole kind of, you create this kind of the short supply of it, and you build up all the tension. It's
exactly.
It works. I mean, it's perfect marketing from their perspective, but it's all about whether they can hold it all together, isn't it? Everybody's waiting for that moment of, you know, the first argument, the first little break, and we'll see whether it all falls apart.
Well, what I saw last night, because I had quite good seats fairly near the front, is when they walked off stage, obviously it was, you know, elevated. Underneath, there was a car literally waiting to go. So I wonder if they kind of get in that car, get driven out to their... It's been widely reported that they're not staying in the same hotel. Get driven out to their prospective hotels where they can go and get, you know, a good night's sleep. Not get into any trouble, not get into any...
Yeah, I've got to say, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us. I do apologise.